Be a man, must be swift as a cool. Hope everybody's having a good day. Yeah, I know we started a little early. Justin is going to go live at 10 a.m. What's he doing? We have a tacit agreement that we don't overlap. What is he doing? Indeed, the oath is broken. Justin, you have betrayed me. Let me... I have been betrayed. All right, well, we do have a guest already, somebody who's wanted to come up for a while, so let's bring them up. May as well just get started, right? Theosophical Wanderings. You've been waiting quite patiently for quite some time now.
Yeah. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can. So what's up? What do you want to talk about?
Okay. I just have a fine-tuning argument. First, I wanted to compliment you on a couple things I've noticed. There was a live you did last week, I think, and there was a gentleman on there, and I think you kind of like detected that he was an alcoholic, and you said, "Hey,
yes.
I don't." Yeah, you said, I don't know how you picked up on that. I must have missed it.
He
but
told
you
me.
Said, oh, okay, I missed that part. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, but why don't we just dive right in, yeah?
Sure, I'll get in there. I just appreciate that, man.
Yeah, of course.
Anyways, so here's my argument. Just two premises and conclusion. It says, if an outcome is far more expected on theism than on naturalism, it supports theism. Premise 2, a life-permitting universe that allows for rational minds is an outcome far more expected on theism than on naturalism. And then the conclusion, therefore, our life-permitting universe supports theism.
Yeah, okay. How do you justify premise 2?
So premise 2, I got two ways here. There's like a two-prong approach. So I argue for why rationality is not expected on naturalism, and then I argue for why rationality is more expected on theism. So the first prong is a second argument here. So it's premise 1.
Hold on, just before we continue.
Sure.
By naturalism, do you just mean like physical causal closure, or how exactly are you using the phrase or the word naturalism?
It's the view that reality consists only of the natural world, things like matter, energy.
So that doesn't really help. Is like a soul natural? So like we need, like, you can't define naturalism in terms of the natural world, right?
Right. Well, there's no supernatural beings or causes.
Okay. So, okay, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, why rationality is not expected on naturalism. So, premise 1, a reality that is fundamentally non-rational gives us no reason to expect rationality. Premise 2, naturalism posits a reality that is fundamentally non-rational. Conclusion, therefore, naturalism gives us no reason to expect things like rationality or intentionality.
So
the second...
so we can talk about that. So your first premise is that... actually, can you repeat those two premises? Maybe I'll just jot them down.
Sure. A reality that is fundamentally non-rational gives us no reason to expect rationality. That's premise 1.
Sure.
And then premise 2 is naturalism posits a reality that is fundamentally non-rational. And then the conclusion, therefore naturalism,
sure.
Yeah, got it.
What does it mean for a reality to be either rational or non-rational?
Well, rationality to me has to do with like intentionality. It's sort of like a product of a mind. Like if you have like the natural world is.
Hold on. Now I'm a little bit confused. Those two notions are kind of distinct. So on the one hand, you can have intentionality, and on the other hand, you can have something that is the product of a mind. So, and those two things are not the same thing, right? They're not even closely related. For example, you can have a computer. It's a product of a mind, right? And a computer, but perhaps we wouldn't say that a computer is rational, right? We would say that a computer maybe was made by something that is rational, but it's not rational itself. So it's not clear to me what it means for a thing to be rational, right?
Right. Maybe this will help. Like I have rationality defined as something, it refers to the quality of being reasonable or logical.
Okay, so how does it mean for reality to be, what does it mean for reality to be reasonable?
Well, physical reality is not reasonable. There's no mental phenomenon happening. But rationality is sort of dependent on a mental phenomenon.
What does it mean for anything to be, what does it mean for a thing to be reasonable? Like, we usually think of ideas as being reasonable. We usually don't think of things as being reasonable.
Could you repeat that? You kind of said it really fast. We usually think of what?
We usually think of ideas being reasonable. We don't usually think of things or collections of things or objects being reasonable. So it's not clear to me what it would mean for reality to be rational or reasonable or logical. These are qualities of ideas or of concepts, not of things.
Right. I think I have to think about that a little more. When something is reasonable, I think it's something that is there's sort of like a reasoning process going on, and it is following that reasoning process. But I think only minds can undertake reasoning processes. So it's kind of like off the cuff. That's the best way I can describe it, I think.
So can you elaborate then on what what kind of characteristics would you expect, some object, call it a flumbus? What characteristics of the flumbus, what characteristics should the flumbus have if you were going to qualify it as rational?
I would think it would have to have some kind of deliberating process where it's thinking about things, because rationality is it has to do with like a mental process. It's a reasoning process,
sure.
Right?
Okay, so but then why does your first premise talk about reality that is fundamentally non-rational? I mean, I think under probably both of our worldviews, reality itself isn't a mind, unless you're like some sort of like, analytic, like Christian idealist or something like this, or analytic idealist, where you think that the only thing that exists is mind.
Right. I would say, yeah. I mean, I would say reality itself is in the sense of, at least on naturalism, I think you just have these physical processes.
I mean, on both of our worldviews, that's the question, right? So like I don't know what it means for, like, you could say that the origin or the cause, whatever caused reality, if whatever caused reality is fundamentally non-rational, then that gives us no reason to expect rationality. But your premise is that reality itself is non-rational. I think that that's a category error.
Right. We could say the foundation of reality is not rational. So when I'm
foundation in what sense?
The base, like the absolute metaphysical grounding of reality is not, like, on my view, it is rational, because on my view, God would be the fundamental metaphysical grounding of reality, and that is rational. That's the foundation of reality. But on naturalism, the fundamental, the absolute foundation is not rational at all.
So it's not clear to me what an absolute foundation is. Do you mean like something that has like some sort of like ontological grounding, or like some supervening relation, or like a causal relation? What are we talking about here?
I guess I'm not sure how else I can explain it. Like the foundation of reality, like.
Okay, so what do you take the foundation of reality to be in a naturalistic worldview? Just so I can understand what you mean.
Physical reality, or some kind of.
I mean, you can't say that. Presumably, a thing can't ground itself, right?
Right. We'll probably just have to agree on some basic definition, because I'm not sure. Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Because it's just not clear. It's just not clear what like a lot of these words seem to be like kind of confusing, like the intender with the intended, and the object that is rational, or the object itself compared with the, the origins of the object. Like, it just seems kind of confused.
Right. I mean, I don't know how to explain like the foundation of reality. It's just
So what would you? I mean, look.
You
So
can't
presumably,
clarify it any further. I guess. I'm not sure what else.
Like if your definition of foundation is okay in your sense of the word foundation, can a thing be the foundation of itself?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that. I think we're going to be kind of going off topic here. We're going to be bringing in sort of like how we understand contingency and necessity.
The only reason I ask it, it's not to like go into like some sort of argument. It's just because it's not clear to me what you mean by foundation. And when I asked for what you think the foundation of reality is from a naturalistic worldview, you just said reality itself. And I'm like, well, okay, if maybe that's a coherent way of understanding foundation, but then in that sense, a thing can be the foundation of itself. And then I'm just not quite sure what you mean.
I mean, this is where we're going to get into is something necessary or contingent, and then what I'm afraid will happen is we're going to go off on a rabbit trail about what that means.
So when you say foundation, you just mean like there is some sort of
metaphysically necessary,
or rather that in order for thing B to exist, thing A must also exist. You would say that A is the foundation of B.
Yeah, and you can't go any further. Like, it's just foundational. It's just metaphysically necessary.
Okay.
And so we might have.
So there's a like a necessity condition. If B exists, then it's necessary that A exists. It's fine. Okay, so that's what you mean.
Right.
Okay. So you take it to be so your first premise is something like a reality whose foundation is fundamentally non-rational gives us no reason to expect that the reality is rational, or that.
To expect, I think you got half of it right.
A reality
to expect rationality.
Okay, to expect rationality, like just in general, or like what? Yeah, rationality of what?
Well, just rationality in general. So if the foundation is non-rational, what is it about a non-rational foundation that would make you anticipate rationality? It's sort of like saying, what about... Well,
I mean, it depends on your understanding of what rationality is, right? I mean, like, for example, you might say, a reality or a substance that is, a molecule that is not wet, or a substance composed of a molecule that is not wet gives us no reason to expect that the substance itself is wet. But that's just like a composition fallacy, right? Like, you can have like individual H2O molecules aren't wet. They're just individual molecules. However, when you put a bunch of them together, you get wet stuff, right? And so it seems like your first premise is just, in some sense, predicated on a particular view or a particular understanding of what rationality is and where it comes from. And I imagine that if we dug into this, it would just be begging the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it begs the question. I think it's sort of like conceptually, it just seems to be completely different things. Like, non-rationality is sort of like a denial of rationality. It's like expecting being from non-being.
Well, I mean, you could say that non-wetness is a denial of wetness, but H2O molecules are not wet, and yet you put a bunch of them together and you get wet stuff. And so, like, if you posited if you replaced, if you used the same structure for a premise about, H2O molecules and wetness and water, your premise would have the same form. It would, in some sense, have the same level of evidence, and it would be false. So on what grounds do I have to think that this particular form is true, but the particular form about wetness and water and H2O molecules is false?
Right. I don't think you're expecting anything different. When you expect wetness from a molecule, is it a completely different type of thing, or it's just a new rearrangement of that thing?
No. So, I mean, like, it is, I mean, like there is no sense in which you can reasonably say that a single H2O molecule is wet. And so it's fundamentally non-wet, right? Oh, where'd he go? When you're off that, by the way, I can't hear you.
Hello? I don't know what
Welcome
happened.
back. Yeah, so maybe I can just help. Maybe I'll write this out and just to give make my objection a little bit more clear. For my, it's hardly even an objection.
I think I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's like with the wetness thing. It's still a physical phenomenon.
Right.
It's like
that's it's not really.
Let me
question.
finish what I'm saying.
Okay, sure.
Right, but let me just maybe put this out there. Maybe this will kind of help clarify. So it's kind of like, why would we expect a physical phenomenon from a physical state of being? I could see how we would expect that. So wetness is a physical phenomenon that's not different in substance than a molecule. It's still a physical phenomenon where you'd expect another physical phenomenon. Rationality is a completely different thing from non-rationality. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a completely different, at least in my mind, it's a completely different substance or a type of phenomenon. And that's the trouble I'm having. I don't see how it would predict it. One would predict the other. It seems to be like a pile of rocks doesn't predict rationality at all. Like you wouldn't expect that. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I think you're muted, Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Blitz.
sorry. Yeah, so look at the argument that I just wrote out.
Okay,
that's somewhat in parallel in yours.
Right, let's see.
So we have a molecule that is fundamentally non-wet, gives us no reason to expect wetness. H2O molecules are fundamentally non-wet. Conclusion, we have no reason to expect wetness. And I added a little bit of an addendum here. But just in general, we have no reason to expect wetness, right? But this is obviously false.
Right. Did you hear what I said? I think this might be, I don't think this is identical to what I'm saying, because wetness is still a physical phenomenon and a molecule is still a physical phenomenon. But I think rationality is a completely different type of thing.
Right. And that's what I meant by begging the question. Like this is assuming a particular worldview of what rationality even is, right?
Right. Okay.
Which I'm like, I'm strongly leaning towards some sort of emergent description of rationality, right? In the same way that we get emergent wetness from otherwise fundamentally non-wet molecules.
Right. Well, then maybe we could. I guess the way I'm seeing it in my head is sort of like, oh, geez, I just had an example. Could you put that syllogism back on the screen that you had?
Yep.
It slipped my mind. Totally slipped my mind. Oh man, sorry about that.
You're fine.
Yeah, it'll probably come to me later.
But look, so the reason I pushed back on this is merely because it's just not clear to me that you can't have rationality arising, and perhaps it's even expected that rationality would arise even in a fundamentally non-rational universe. If your understanding of rationality is merely that it's an emergent process from non-rational things, then it would be totally expected.
Right. I guess what we could do is we could pivot. I think it's an uninformed prior. Because why would we? I don't think there's anything about. Here's what I mean by that. It's the constraints are non-informed. It's kind of like if naturalism is sort of like a mindless, purposeless reality, then why would it could be the constants that we have could be anything else. They wouldn't inform us that they would be.
Well, hold on, that's not clear. Like that's like a huge assumption that is not evident at all.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question: what about reality would inform us that the constants would be permitting to rational minds? Like, why would we anticipate that on your worldview?
I mean, if rationality is merely complexity, then given certain fundamental constants, you would expect complexity to arise.
You would define rationality as just complexity. It's not like
if it was a specific kind of complexity, of course. Like there are other kinds of complexity that we wouldn't say rational, and there are certain kinds of complexity that perhaps we would say are like describe emergent rationality.
Well, it's a type of complexity. It produces mental thoughts. It produces mental states. But the thing I'm having trouble with is naturalism. It doesn't inform us of any of that. We could have had totally different constants than the
Well,
ones we have that
to be
don't.
clear, that's
You know,
not evident at all. It's not clear at all that we could have had different constants.
well, I mean, I'm curious as to why. What
I mean,
necessitates the constants?
we have absolutely no reason to think that constants could have been anything else, right? We've never observed constants being different. We've only ever observed them being a particular way. So we have no reason to think that it's even possible that they could have been another way.
Now, by possible, what do you mean?
We
Like
can say,
physically possible, or
probably physically possible is too strong, because obviously it's not physically possible because the physics are governed by the laws of physics, and that includes the constants. But in some slightly looser sense, you might call it like metaphysically possible, where I talk about like the kinds of things that are like perhaps stronger than logically coherent, but weaker than pinned down specifically by these particular laws. So,
right.
and I can give an example of something I mean like this. So, in Euclidean space, in like a Euclidean geometry, the constant pi could not be anything else besides what it is, right? That is a fundamental feature of a Euclidean space. It's just impossible for it to be anything else. And so this is and despite if we didn't know about this, for example, and you had just a bag filled with circles, and you just started pulling out circles from the bag, or you just pulled one circle out from the bag, and then you measured the diameter, you measured the circumference, and you took the ratio of the two, and you said, the ratio of the circumference to the diameter is 3.14. Now, if we had only ever pulled out one circle, maybe you would conceive that, oh, well, maybe I pull out another circle and the ratio of the circumference to the diameter is different. So maybe it's possible that this ratio constant, it could have been different. It could be different for a different circle, but that's just mistaken. And we know that that's mistaken. Like, one can show that in fact it must always be 3.14 and change, right? So what I'm saying is that there is that it's at least conceptually feasible that these are the only ways the constants could be, in much the same way that pi can only be pi.
Right. Is that really metaphysically necessary, though? Is that what you were kind of?
So we don't really know what the deal is with the physical constants. So
right.
It's not clear at all. It's not clear at all that the physical constants are fundamental. It's not clear at all whether maybe they emerge from some deeper physics that are genuinely necessary. There's a lot that we don't know, and so to just say, oh yeah, they could have been different, like, that's not clear at all.
Right. Well, it's not clear at all that they couldn't have been different either.
Right. So in my view, this is
I think you have a burden to show that they have to be this way, and I'm not really clear on that either.
I'm not making the claim that they couldn't have been any other way. What I'm saying is that the right position regarding fine-tuning is agnosticism. Merely because we do not have enough data to come to any conclusions about the ways the fundamental constants could have been.
Okay, I mean, that's fair, but I just don't think you can land on like they have to be this way. What I'm asking is, if it seems to be naturalism is uninformed on which way the constants should be. And so I'm kind of like, why these constants?
If you were not particularly well educated on geometry, then you might say, well, geometry is just uninformed on the way that is just not informed on the value of the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. So why is it 3.14 and not 4.5? This seems like an epistemological gap, not like some sort of like fundamental feature of naturalism.
Right. I mean, but it seems like you're sort of presupposing that there is some kind of natural explanation. It seems like you're kind of presupposing the opposite, though.
Well,
if the question is open,
historically,
okay,
we do have evidence that this is the case, right? We do have evidence of of things that we thought were like fundamentally constant, like fundamental constants in the past, being further understood as something more fundamental in the future. Right, we do have evidence of this happening. The prime example is the Fermi constant, which was developed in the 1920s to try to describe the decay of like neutrons and things like, and muons and so on. We later discovered through the standard model that it's actually, there's a deeper reason as to why the constant was the way it was. So we do have at least have like some evidence that this is a thing, like that we have not really a particularly good reason to think that these constants that we've stumbled upon in the year 2025, these are the final ones, right?
Right, but isn't it naturalism of the gaps though? We don't know, but it's got to be a natural explanation.
Well, no, I mean, like I said, we have evidence, right? And to be clear, I'm not saying that it has to be a natural explanation. What I'm saying is that fine-tuning is sufficiently poorly understood that we should remain agnostic about it.
Right. I guess maybe you've explained it, but I'm not seeing why naturalism would inform us that these particular constants would be the case. It seems like it could have been any.
We don't know stuff about what the constants are. Like, what are the fundamental constants? These are just things that we don't know. Well, so to make arguments about the ways a particular constants must be, the ways that particular constants can be, to make claims about those, I think it's too soon. I think we're doing making an argument off the stuff we just don't have enough information about.
Right, but we do have a concept of what naturalism means. Like, I mean, on your worldview, you don't think there's any purpose, no intentionality.
Sure.
There's no mind behind any of it. So why would we expect mind? Why would we expect the constants to be this way to allow minds?
Look, you could make the exact same, if you were geometrically uninformed, you would make the exact same argument about the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. You would say, why does it have to be this way? Under naturalism, under natural geometrism or whatever, you have no reason to expect that ratio would be 3.14 and not 6.5. But then you study geometry and you're able to prove that it couldn't have been any other way.
Well, just
merely from first principles, right?
Right. I'm not a mathematician. Let me ask you this to clarify your example here. At the beginning of that example, is your informed prior a denial of this particular mathematical phenomenon? It seems like naturalism is a denial of purpose, of intentionality, of mind. That makes it even harder to picture why the constants would allow for minds. But in your analogy, is there a denial of this expected phenomena that ends up being the case?
So in the analogy, so the analogy here, and maybe I can just clarify, the analogy here is merely that so let me back up. We basically know everything there is to know about Euclidean geometry. The field's basically been done since like maybe the 50s, maybe the 40s. So that field's done. Like we know all of the theorems. We know that you can prove them algorithmically. Like fine. But 150 years ago, maybe we didn't. I mean, we absolutely didn't. And so it would have been perhaps reasonable back then, 150 years ago, to say, well, look, maybe this constant, maybe we don't use pi because pi has been known about for a very long time. Maybe this constant, maybe this feature of this shape could be something else. And it's just, maybe it's just in this particular case, it's this value, and in that particular case, it's that value, and this third particular case, it's this third value. But then as you learn more and more about and so the analogy here is that that's akin to your position, that maybe in our universe the constants are this value, but in some other universe they could have been some different value. But then as we learn more and more about geometry, what we find is that actually there's only one possible value that this particular property or something can take on. And so what I'm saying is that it's at least feasible. It's like conceptually feasible that this could be that there could be a similar way that you get the fundamental, what we view as fundamental constants, just strictly from first principles, in the same way that you get pi from first principles in Euclidean geometry, for example. So what I'm saying is that we are not at a point. We are like the geometers from 150 years ago. We are not at a point where we can say anything about the nature of the fundamental constants.
Okay, maybe. And forgive me because I'm trying to process everything. I'll probably have to go back and listen to this to really understand what you're saying on some of this. Let me ask you this: your analogy with Euclidean geometry. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, you kind of made a statement. You said maybe the feature of this, what it sounds like you're describing is that this phenomena was simply just unanticipated. But what I'm saying is, it's naturalism isn't just, minds aren't just unanticipated. They're denied. Naturalism is a denial that at the foundation there is purpose, there is intentionality. It's the denial of all those things. in your Euclidean analogy,
Well,
if you're saying,
perhaps
well,
at the
hold on,
foundation.
let me finish. The Euclidean example, you're not starting off with a denial of the phenomenon. But on naturalism, you are. You're saying at bottom, there is no mind, there is no purpose, no intentionality. So it would be even more surprising to find the constants to allow mind, intentionality, purpose. That's
Sure.
what I'm saying.
Okay. I understand the objection. So I can adjust the analogy to be more analogous in light of that. So suppose that you so I'm gonna have to rely on the Riemann hypothesis here, and I'll explain what I mean. So so there's this thing in number theory. It's a branch of mathematics called the Riemann hypothesis, which just says that all of the prime numbers lie on a particular line. For a particular function, they just all lie on a particular line. There's like some structure there. Now, and this problem was posed 150 years ago, it's still unsolved. Now, if you had talked to the person who proposed this, just as they proposed it, they maybe were thinking that the prime numbers have no reason. Like there's no fundamentally rational feature that would force the prime numbers to fall in this line. There's no ordering structure. The prime numbers are just random. Why should they all fall in this line? But if it turns out that the Riemann hypothesis is true, which most mathematicians think it is for good reasons, if it turns out that the Riemann hypothesis is true, then in fact there is some underlying there's some kind of unseen mathematical structure that we weren't aware of that forces all of these seemingly random prime numbers to fall onto this line. And so even when you totally accept, yeah, there is the prime numbers are essentially as random as they can be, there is some structure there. There's some underlying feature of the randomness that forces them all to be random in a particular way. And so I think that this is probably closer to what you're thinking of, namely that you can deny the order of the prime numbers, and then you find emergent out of the kind of like the way the prime numbers are connected to each other, you find some order there. And that seems like entirely plausible, like the kind of thing that's happening, or at least feasible, the kind of thing that's happening in our physical universe.
Okay. So what it sounds like, let me ask you this. I would probably just make an inference to the best explanation. I would say can you imagine, or are there any examples that you're aware of where a phenomena wasn't predicted and that prediction was correct? I mean, I'm not a physicist.
Where a phenomenon wasn't predicted, but the prediction was correct?
Where a phenomena is not predicted and it turns out to be correct. Like as far as
what turns out to be correct, though?
That this thing is not true. Like your predictions are showing that it's not true, and it just, as opposed to kind of reassessing our data and then, we were wrong about that prediction, this thing is correct, like the example you just gave. Are there examples where the fundamental starting base of your fundamental starting point does not predict it, and it's true that, this thing. Let me think of an example here. Okay, right now, all of our data shows that humans can't fly. Right now, that's kind of like, that's our starting point. What we know now, humans can't fly naturally.
Sure.
This is a starting point, a prior that's never been overturned. And I could think of like tons of things like this. So what you're giving me is an example where, okay, we've had a starting point where we didn't expect this. We've even denied a phenomena, other than we turned out to be wrong. The phenomena was correct. But I'm saying that's not always the case, and I would make an inference to the best explanation here, even if I can't deductively show that non-rationality or a world that denies that can't deductively prove it'll never happen. I would say it's probably the case that it won't happen. It's probably the case that it doesn't predict it. And so I'd kind of like maybe just change my argument there to make it more of an inference to the best explanation. And what it sounds like you're saying is like, well, it's possible.
I can give you examples. And I mean, like there's just like a pretty, like there's a nice web page that has a lot of these. There is if you take a number, if you take a whole number and you raise it to the 17th power and then you add 9, and then you take that same whole number, add 1, then raise it to the 17th power and add 9, those two numbers that you end up with, if you check any number, you try this with any number, those two numbers will have no common factors. So, like a factor of like 6 is 2 and 3, a factor of 12 is 2 and 3. Like those are the factors of, anyway, so that's what it means for them to have no common factors. And if you plugged this into a computer for literally any number that you can think of, you'll get that the answer is, yeah, they don't share any common factors, unless you try a number that has like 60 digits. And so this is a case where we have where we have super good reason to think that every single time you do this, you will always get two numbers that have no common factors. But then if you just go high enough, it turns out that there is a number. It's an enormously large number, but there is a number where all of a sudden they do have common factors again. And so this is just a case of like, yeah, we had like incredibly strong priors, and we had really strong evidence that this is just true, that they always have that they never have common factors. And then somebody basically ran a computer program, and they found a counterexample. So like, this does happen. Like it happens quite frequently in mathematics. It happens in like, this is a thing that happens pretty often in physics. It's like it's a black swan phenomenon, right? Like our expectations being dashed, if you will, is fairly common.
Right.
Now, but if you want to appeal to the best explanation, that's fine. But then you just have to establish that that naturalism is not a good explanation.
Well, let me speak to something you just said. Like, I can already grant that we've had our expectations dashed, but I would also say that there's many times, probably equally numerous times, where our expectations have never not been dashed. Like the example of,
yeah, sure, absolutely.
Our expectation now is that humans can't fly.
Yep.
I don't foresee, but the structure of my argument's the same. So it's kind of like, using your example just says that sometimes our expectations are dashed, but there are other times when they're not, where they're never overturned. Humans still can't fly to this day, and I don't expect that to be overturned. So at this point, I would say two things. I think you would still have to give us a better reason to think it's more probable that naturalism would anticipate mind. Remember, a world that denies the mental, denies purpose, denies intentionality, would predict constants that allow for those things to make it more probable. I would say it's just improbable, even if I can't deductively prove it. I would say it's just.
Well, no, I mean, like, look. So
what would your IBE be?
How do you even, like, on what basis do you come to the conclusion that it's improbable?
The evidence I've already shared. It seems like conceptually these are two different things, and there's a denial. I'm just spitting off the cuff. They seem to be conceptually two different things. The anticipation starts with a denial. Now, I'm going to agree with you, for the sake of argument, that sometimes our anticipations get dashed. I just haven't seen that reason here. I mean,
so denying a feature of the foundation has nothing to do with denying a feature of the consequent thing that is founded, right? Like those, like this is like they're just not related, right? They can be related. They can be related, but there's I don't see any reason to think that they have to be related. I mean, emergent phenomena are the key example of things where the structure of this, like the underlying structure, is just basically disconnected from what happens at a higher level.
Right, but I think this is where you would have to show the probability that, hey, this is what we'd expect. And I'm sort of asking,
you can't tell me to show the probability when your probability is based on vibes.
Well, it's not vibes. It's kind of like conceptually, I don't see it.
So how are you getting a probability from the conceptually?
Like we argue against God conceptually all the time. Like we start with the a priori conception of God. We argue with how he's defined, and then we make a prediction based off of that. We compare conceptions all the time, and so
right, I mean, like,
this up more,
look, we can talk about conceptions, but if you're trying to make like some sort of Bayesian case here, like using prior and posterior probabilities, then like we can't just go off of like, oh, I just don't see how it can happen. That's not enough.
Well, conceptually, it doesn't predict it. I mean, what do you think?
Conceptually, nothing predicts anything, right? Like conceptually, the foundation is not intrinsically linked to the thing it founds.
Well, omnibenevolence doesn't predict. This is the argument that skeptics make against God. They say omnibenevolence doesn't predict the evil that we see. That's a conceptual.
By the way, how do you feel about that argument?
I am a skeptical theist on that. What that means is...
you can't be a skeptical theist and make an argument for the best explanation.
Oh, okay. I think we're going off on a rabbit trail here.
I mean, you can't. However, this is actually like devastating for your worldview.
Right, but hold on. I think the point I'm trying to make is that we can make predictions from concepts to what is the case. Like I said, this is what atheists do with the concept of God's omnibenevolence. It doesn't predict the evil that we see. That's what I'm doing here. This seems to be a conceptual denial of the mental. Naturalism starts out in a denial of the mental, and so I'm kind of extrapolating. So why would we expect the mental on that worldview?
Why wouldn't you?
Because it's a denial. Why would we expect the level of evil that we have?
Those two things are unrelated.
From an omnibenevolent God.
Well, look. So when you run the problem of evil, typically you can like break down what it means for something to be omnibenevolent, for example, and you can break down.
Which is a concept.
Yeah, it's a concept, and then you can say like, look, for an agent to be omnibenevolent, this implies certain desires of that omnibenevolent agent, right? And given those desires, given certain powers and so on, that implies that such an agent will take certain actions to do certain things. So this is a, it's in some sense you can call it deductive, although typically we use inductive arguments now. But what I'm getting at is that it's not just omnibenevolent God just denies the existence of evil, and so it just doesn't make sense that there's evil. No, there's like a chain of reasoning that gets you from an omnibenevolent God or a tri-omni God to a seeming incompatibility with the existence of evil. Whereas it seems like what the argument you're making is merely, we have a foundation that doesn't have intention, say, and then it's just like, it just seems like that means that there shouldn't be intention in the universe. Like, what's the logical connective there?
Right. That's I probably have to flesh that out a little more. I mean, I would say I don't think it would be difficult to. I just don't think I could do it right on a live right now. But
that's fine.
Yeah. So it just seems non-informed. It seems like, what would we expect from a world that is non-rational? I mean, maybe I could sketch it this way. This is rough, so I'd have to think about it more. But so what would we expect from a world that is non-rational? There's no purpose, no intentionality. We'd expect conditions or parameters that would reflect that, or would just kind of be consistent with that, I think. And so the issue for me is that what we find are parameters that are consistent with a non-intentionality, no purpose, no mind, nothing mental. We would expect,
sure. Arguably that's what we have.
Right, but then all of a sudden we have parameters that permit rational minds. It's kind of surprising.
Right. So the parameters can be consistent with a non-rational foundation and also permit rational minds. Those are not inconsistent positions.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So you could have a set of parameters that are consistent with non-rational origins, while also having those same parameters allow for the arisal. That's not a word. For the emergence of rational minds. Right, like the origin of the thing and what it gives rise to are not logically connected.
Well, it's about what you'd expect.
So I'm asking, how do you go from what the origin of the thing is to what you expect about the consequent?
Well, I think you would do similar to what you do with the problem of evil. You kind of you begin with the conceptual idea of what reality is like, and on your worldview, it seems like reality is it's reality. There's no purpose. There's no intention. There's no mind.
Well, I think and what would you? What kind of? I absolutely think that there are minds.
Well, hold on. Let me finish. So you're starting with that conceptual basis, and you're like, what would you expect? What kind of constants would you expect from that basis, from that foundation? And I would expect I would expect constants that don't produce minds. That's what I would expect. Because that's how reality is. Why would we? It seems like it's uninformed. It seems like we'd expect any array of constants. But we
Well,
get these.
again, why would you expect any constants besides the ones we have?
Well, I would expect constants that don't permit rational minds from a world that is not rational.
Why would you expect any constants besides the ones we have?
Well, I mean, if we're starting, is that a question about, are you sort of asking, is it possible for them to be different, or is it because
I'm asking? Look, our priors for the most likely constants are these ones, right? That's what your priors should be.
well, we're starting with two hypotheses, naturalism and theism. So the way I'm reading your question is, why on naturalism would you expect constants that allow for minds? I wouldn't.
Why?
I really wouldn't.
I mean, like, look, it sounds like you're saying that, like, for some reason we should expect that the constants should be different in a way that doesn't allow minds. And like, why?
That doesn't allow for minds because at bottom there is no mind, there is no purpose, no intentionality.
Look. At bottom, is there are there stars at bottom? No, of course not. Stars are like some sort of like emergent large scale structure, and yet
but are
stars
minds? Yeah, they do, but they're not. Naturalism isn't a denial of physical processes. Stars are just physical processes.
I don't think it really matters that there's it seems like you're leaning pretty heavily on like this whole denial business. Like, I don't think that, like, you know, like the denial of like the foundational mind, I don't think that really matters. Like, the point is what are your metaphysics? Your metaphysics are either that there are supernatural causes or that there aren't. And it just seems like whether or not there are supernatural causes, that doesn't really say anything about whether we should expect stars to exist. Like, for example, in your worldview, at the foundation, it's only mind, right? It's only physical. So would you expect there to be anything at all physical? Well, I mean, I guess not if we're using your reasoning. Because you know, your foundation denies the physical, right?
It could be, but it doesn't deny the rational. It doesn't deny mental or purpose.
Right, but it denies the physical. But we do indeed find right. But okay. So are you suggesting that there are no physical things?
No, not at all, not at all. But my argument isn't an argument from physical phenomena. It's
what I'm doing is I'm inverting your argument and showing that it's a little bit absurd.
Oh, well, I mean, you could do that with any expectation. You could say, I'm not denying that a certain hypothesis will predict a certain outcome. I mean, that's trivial. I mean, that's what you're saying. Like, well, we could say God doesn't predict physical beings or physical makeup. Fine, I'll grant that, but that's not what's on the table today.
No, but it absolutely is, right? Because you're saying, well, look, naturalism, exactly parodying your argument, naturalism does not expect, you know, perhaps minds, mental objects, right? Because, you know, at the foundation there are no mental objects, so why would you expect mental objects? And yet we see mental objects, we see minds, and therefore naturalism is disfavored, right? But in the exact same way, theism does not expect physical objects. And yet we see physical objects. I imagine that you agree with me on that. Yeah. And therefore theism is disfavored.
When it comes to physical objects, I could grant that as an evidential chip. But I don't think that's what's on the table, though.
The arguments are equally strong, right? So it seems like this style of argument gets you nowhere with regards to the existence of a god, whether or not it seems like this style of argument should leave you agnostic.
It seems to me like I think all you're saying is that, hey, a certain hypothesis will predict a certain outcome. I agree. So when it comes to physical objects, yeah, theism doesn't necessarily predict that. I agree, but that doesn't. You just adjust the argument you're making to what does the hypothesis predict. And naturalism, to my mind, I just haven't seen any reason to anticipate the mental or the rational or intentionality or any of that stuff. I just haven't seen it.
My point is I don't think that. Do you take it to be the case that the fact that there's a physical world makes theism weaker? Do you think that that's actually like true? That theism is a weaker position because there's a physical world?
Not necessarily. What I said earlier, I'm just for the sake of argument, I could say, you know, just to kind of just to kind of throw that chip out there just to make the point. But I'd have to think about that a little more. I don't think so, not necessarily, because yeah, not off the top. I don't think it is.
So look, all I'm saying is that the parity argument goes both ways, which and by the way, I don't think it's the case that the existence of the physical world makes the existence of a god less plausible. I don't think that that's a particularly compelling argument, because I don't think that the nature of the foundation affects what you expect to see. That's the result of the foundation. I don't think that those two things are intrinsically linked. So I just don't think the argument works. But if that's the case, if the argument doesn't work, then your argument doesn't work either.
Right. I think
they're the same style of argument.
Yes, but all you're saying is that a modus ponens is a modus ponens. It's like, yes, they're the same.
No, I'm sorry. All I'm saying is that the underlying implication of the argument that the foundation informs on the or that the foundation informs on what's expected of the thing that is founded, I think that is a faulty premise.
Okay, well, we've already been
otherwise it leads you to the I agree, absurd conclusion that the existence of a physical world is not predicted given a god.
Right. I think we've already been through this. I've already said there are examples or scenarios where our anticipations are dashed. But I'm saying I would convert this to an inference to the best explanation. There are also scenarios where our anticipations aren't dashed.
Okay, so then I would make an inference to the best explanation. I would make an inference to the best explanation that the existence of a physical world is best explained by naturalism, because you have a natural foundation which gives rise to a natural world.
No. That's what you have to. The data is parameters that allow for rational minds. Why would that?
I'm making a different inference to the best explanation. I'm saying, look, we have a natural world that is best explained by a natural foundation rather than a supernatural one.
Right, but the data. What we're trying to explain are these constants that allow for rational minds. Why would that be predicted? What would be your IBE for that on naturalism?
I'm doing a parity argument.
Okay, is it a parity argument, or you're just taking
it's a parity argument? Yeah.
Right, but I thought we kind of went through this. I already granted that our anticipations are dashed. There are occasions where they're dashed.
Oh,
is that the parity?
So no. Look. So if we're allowed to use sometimes our anticipations are dashed as a way to get around this inference, then I would just use the exact same argument for your claim about the nature of the particular physical constants.
Right, but sometimes our anticipations aren't dashed.
So why are they dashed? Why is it reasonable to think that our anticipations are dashed in the case of God being unexpected given physical world, but they're not dashed in the case of God or of naturalism being unexpected in the case of mind permitting constants? What's the symmetry breaker?
Okay. I would have to think about that more.
That's fine. I mean, it's like we can call it there. By the way, I do want to bring something up, which is just interesting, because you brought up the problem of evil. Not that I want to talk about the problem of evil, but you're a skeptical theist, fine. But have you read? There's a paper, and I haven't read it, but I've read the beginning of it. And let me see, is it this one? And it's on my reading list. But the paper is called "If We Can't Tell What Theism Predicts, We Can't Tell Whether God Exists." Have you heard about this paper by Clement Haga?
I know who Clement Haga is, and it sounds familiar. Maybe the concept. Yeah. Is it sort of like it produces like global skepticism?
Not really. It's I mean, sort of, kind of. Roughly, the argument is merely, look, if we are not able, if God is some inscrutable thing whose reasons cannot be understood by mere mortals, right? Hence why, there could be evils, and the reasons for those evils we just don't understand. Then it seems like we just are incapable of figuring out what kinds of things we would expect given a God, right?
Yeah, I think that leads to like a global skepticism. I think that's sort of the point.
And if that's the case, then you can't make any Bayesian arguments for God. You can't make any sort of inferences to the best explanation or any sort of like, probabilistic arguments. You can't say, oh, well, it's more likely that this is true given a God than otherwise, because you have no idea what to expect given that a God exists.
I would deny that. I would deny that inference. I don't think it leads to that level of skepticism. And Perry Hendricks has written a few papers on it. I don't have them in front of me to give you the titles, but he's like he's an expert on skeptical theism. That's kind of like his bread and butter, and he's responded to a lot of arguments like that. So I would just kind of put that up for the audience. Let me leave you with this, Dr. Blitz. It's been a great combo. So let's just grant. Hey, let's just grant for the sake of argument. I need to think a little bit more about this parity thing. Let me challenge you on something. Let's say theism doesn't predict this. I would challenge you, how does naturalism, what is your inference to the best explanation for why your reality would predict rational minds? And I just want to leave that for you and the audience. But hey, man, it's been a great combo, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Theosophical.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I figure I should probably answer that, right? I mean, roughly, I'm very agnostic about fine-tuning. I'm not convinced that there even is fine-tuning. I'm not convinced that if there is fine-tuning, I'm not convinced that there is fine-tuning, perhaps that these are the only ways the universe could have been. I'm also not even convinced that if the universe were slightly different, you couldn't have rational minds. That doesn't seem to be true. I'm also not convinced that, like, there's only the one universe with the one set of physical constants. Like, it could, like, there are just so many things that could account for why the constants are what they are, that it's just not clear to me at all that this is something that we have the tools to explain right now. So I take the fine-tuning argument to be one that, oh, we should be agnostic about the origins of the constants of nature. That's what I take it to be. All right, let's bring on our next guest. Oh, I missed reading the super chats. All right, I'll read the super chats after this. Ryan.
Hello.
Ryan, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing A-okay. Ryan, do you believe in a God?
Yes.
Okay, and which one would that be?
The one of the Quran.
The one of the Quran. Okay. And Ryan, how old are you?
I'm 19.
Okay. Great. So what would you say is the most compelling argument you could give, an atheist like myself, that would, push me towards believing in the God that you believe in?
Well, I don't really have a set argument just because there are so many. There is infinite arguments, right?
So what would you say is the most compelling one?
Yeah, no, I just said, like, I don't have, like, an idea of the most compelling one just because that they are all compelling to me. So it just depends on the person, right? So
okay. So if I were to, like, what do you think will be most compelling for me?
If I were to try to convince you, I'd have to get to know your stance on theism. So I want to know, like, why are you an atheist instead of an agnostic?
The arguments I've heard for atheism, for the non-existence of a God, are stronger than the arguments I've heard for the existence of a God. I've heard sufficient arguments that I think that my position is has crystallized somewhat. So I'm not in the position.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so I've heard sufficient arguments that my position has crystallized. I've found many of the arguments, in fact, I would say probably most or all of the arguments for a theistic position to be not particularly compelling. And I've found several arguments for the atheistic position to be rather compelling. And so that has led me to the conclusion that, or that has led me to have high credence that the proposition God exists is false. That's why. I've just heard a lot of arguments for the non-existence of a God.
Can I hear those?
Yeah, I mean, there's several that are pretty compelling. So, one is that one is an inductive argument, namely that we have good reason to think that merely from physiological, from neurological, from psychological phenomena, we have good reason to think that our minds are tied to our brains. Namely that it seems like minds cannot exist in the absence of brains. Every mind I've ever seen is always tied to a brain. And so if it's the case that minds are always tied to brains, or that we have a good reason to think that minds are always tied to brains, then it is impossible that there could be a disembodied mind that's not attached to a brain. This would be God, so that would make God impossible. A second argument that I find fairly compelling.
Wait, can we just go one at a time, so like it's easier for?
I mean, so sure, if you want, but I'm not here to give you my arguments and for you to debunk them. You're here to give me arguments. I was just offering you a sample of the arguments that I find compelling, so you could get a feel for the kinds of things that I think are good arguments.
Well, I think it's just subjective onto how you feel about the arguments.
Yeah, that's true. That's how we evaluate arguments. Whether the arguments are compelling or not is arguably subjective. Yeah.
So I'm trying to show you why the arguments that you're using aren't compelling to me. Right.
Well, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm not trying to convince you, Ryan. You're trying to convince me.
No, I'm trying to convince you why those arguments don't work.
Okay, but you're going to tell me why they don't work for you. That's not going to inform whether they don't work for me.
Yeah, but I'm here to convince you. I can't.
Yeah, so you have to convince me that a God exists, not that my reasons for thinking a God doesn't exist are bad.
What?
Right?
But wouldn't that be included in me convincing you that God exists?
No. At best, that would get me to agnostic.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Okay, so your plan is not to try to convince me to believe in your God?
No, once you're agnostic, then it's easier.
Well, why don't you just present the argument that you would present to an agnostic person?
Because you're more open-minded if you don't have the presuppositions that the arguments that you have for atheism are compelling. And especially once you're an agnostic, you're more open-minded.
Are you more open-minded?
What do you mean?
Are you as open-minded as an agnostic person?
No, I'm just saying an agnostic person would be more open-minded to God than an atheist.
I mean, sure, insofar as they haven't made a decision or that they're uncertain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so why not I give you then, because I wasn't, so it sounds like what you want to do is not actually give me an argument. Is that the case?
There's too many arguments and nothing ever proves God, so I don't feel like I can convince you by giving your arguments.
Wait, so look, I could tell you what I think is probably the strongest argument against the existence of a God, but you can't tell me what you think is the strongest argument for the existence of a God?
Well, there are many that come to mind, don't it?
Okay, can you name one?
Yeah, Gödel's proof.
Are you familiar with Gödel's proof? Because you're not familiar with it?
No, like I've heard of it, but like I'm not too well versed into it.
So it's not an argument that you could ever give. Almost certainly you don't understand it.
That would be for most arguments, though, especially because.
Right. So I'm asking, what is the best argument that you could give me?
Oh, I'm saying that there are too many arguments, and I'd rather just work on what convinces you there isn't a God.
Yeah. Okay. How about this? So why not work with this? I take causation to be a thing that happens in time, and if the universe is caused and the universe contains time, then it's a category error to say that anything caused the universe to exist.
Well, then I'll just say God manifested it.
What does manifestation mean?
So like, you see when you're dreaming, yeah?
Yep.
You can manifest things in that dream?
In that sense, we say that we can cause that dream to exist in our minds, right?
Yeah, but then it comes to like mental things, which isn't physical, so it's like.
I mean, that's neither here nor there. This is still like a temporal cause.
No. Like, I'm just saying, like, once you move out of the physical, it's it no longer has to be temporal, right? Everything that is physical.
I don't know what it means for a cause to be non-temporal. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, basically, like, the way you use cause day to day will be temporal, but it doesn't necessitate that God couldn't create the universe and be outside of time.
Can you explain to me what a cause is that's not temporal?
Again, this is just semantics. It's like,
no, this isn't semantics. I take causation to be a thing that only happens in time.
Yeah, but you can't prove all causes are like that.
That's just if you're talking about some other thing that you're calling a cause that's not temporal, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so like not all causes have to be temporal because we can't.
Can you give me an example?
No, I can't.
So why should I think that there are non-temporal causes?
Because you don't have a reason not to.
Sure, I do. I have like every single reason in the world. Every single cause I've ever seen is temporal. That is like
Yeah, but that doesn't.
so
It doesn't
good.
necessitate.
That is absolutely good reason.
Okay, it doesn't necessitate that.
No, it
that
doesn't.
means
But it's
everything.
very, very strong theist or very, very strong inductive evidence that it is the case.
Okay, and then I'd say, well, I see reason in everything, so why wouldn't I assume PSR, which would be a proof of God?
Oh well, I mean, I could give you like perhaps counterexamples, but it depends on which version of the PSR you take.
Yeah, so like, but
Also,
that's
the
my
PSR
point.
is
Like,
not a proof for God. That is really rough for you.
what do you mean? No, there's an argument for God using PSR. Conditionally, if you accept PSR, then you have to accept God.
No, you don't. I mean, are you talking about the strong PSR,
Depends
the
on
weak
both.
PSR? Which like there's like 7 PSRs. Which PSR are you talking about?
I think it's a weak one.
Okay, so the weak PSR, and let me pull up. So there's like again like 3 weak ones, but we can pull up. We can go to here.
I think
This
it's
is on
any
Alexander
contingent.
Pruse's blog. So the weak PSR from Richard Gale and Alexander Pruse is for all contingent truths P, it is possible that P has an explanation. So is that what you're talking about for the weak PSR?
No.
So which
Every
PSR are you
contingent-
talking about?
Every contingent one has an explanation.
Every contingent truth has an explanation.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's work through this. So you take that the universe exists as a contingent truth?
Well, that's what we observe.
Well, I mean, hold on. That's debatable, but we can we can get to that. So you take that to be a contingent truth. So then what's the explanation? Oh, and by the way, I take it because this is the PSR, you mean that there is a sufficient explanation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what is the sufficient explanation that the universe exists under your worldview?
Yeah, that would be God.
Sorry, just stipulating an object isn't an explanation. You have to stipulate an explanation. What is the explanation, right?
Well, what do you mean, like
If
you
I
don't
say
understand what God means?
if I say that my phone exists, the explanation
Yeah.
is not Steve Jobs, right? The explanation is that Steve Jobs
Steve
founded
Jobs-
a company, and that company produced this phone in a factory, and then I bought the phone.
Okay.
That would be the explanation that this phone exists, or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
God
not
isn't-
just
God isn't a-
Steve Jobs.
God
So
isn't a-
what is the actual explanation? What is the sufficient explanation for?
God is a necessary being, and so
Yeah.
therefore he
Sure.
manifested all contingent truths.
Okay, so the sufficient explanation is that a necessary being manifested this. I don't know what that means. Is that supposed to be some sort of causal thing, or is that just like this just happened?
Yeah, it's a causal thing.
Okay, so we have a necessary thing, God, and then we have some other truth that the necessary thing manifested the universe existing, say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now God is a necessary thing, so it doesn't need explanation. But God manifesting the necessary, or the universe existing, is that necessary or contingent?
No, it's contingent on his divine will.
Okay, so God manifesting the universe is contingent on the divine will. So is the divine will a sufficient explanation for God manifesting, manifesting the universe?
Well, compared to the contrary,
I don't know
I'd
what
say
compared
yes.
to the contrary means. Like, is the divine will being
compared to naturalism.
present?
Compared to naturalism.
Necessity and contingency is not a comparative thing; it's a binary, right? So this is not a compared to naturalism. Whatever. Like, is it the case that God's will existing necessitates, or rather, is sufficient for for God to manifest the universe into existence? Is that sufficient?
I don't see why it's not.
Okay, so if it's sufficient, then is God's will contingent or necessary?
It's contingent on God.
Okay, so if God exists, then is God's existence sufficient to explain God's will being what it is?
I'm confused. Are you saying like
If God exists,
would
does
it-
that therefore imply that God's will is whatever it is?
you would only know by experience.
I'm asking under your worldview.
Under my worldview, yeah.
Okay, so then you have that God is necessary, and God's existence is sufficient to explain to explain the will being what it is. And so it follows from the K axiom of modal logic that God's will is necessary. It's not contingent, actually. And God's will being necessary and God's will being sufficient.
Can you explain that bit?
Yeah, so if you have a necessary and sufficient cause for something, what sufficient means is that in every world in which the I shouldn't use cause. We should say the antecedent. If you have a necessary antecedent,
But when did I say it was necessary?
God is necessary, right, in your worldview?
No, the antecedent of God.
The antecedent. God doesn't have an antecedent in your worldview. God is the antecedent for God's will, right?
Antecedent is the thing that it implies, right? Like,
Yeah, no, it's the first thing. The antecedent is the thing.
Okay,
the consequent is the second thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your worldview, God is the antecedent for God's will to be what it is, right?
Yeah.
So God is necessary, and what it means for something to be a sufficient cause is that in any possible world where the sufficient antecedent exists, the consequent follows. So that means that in every possible world where God exists, God's will is what it is, which means that God's will is necessary. That's what it means for something to be necessary. It exists in all possible worlds.
I wouldn't agree on those definitions, but then I
so
can give you
then what do you mean?
Like, a good one back. Yeah, just sufficient as in like.
That's what sufficient means. Sufficient means that if a sufficient implication is that if A is present, then B is present. That would be A is sufficient to explain B, for example.
You lost me. I can't lie. How does that mean that whatever God creates is necessary?
So look, if God is necessary, and God is the necessary cause of his will. I'm using cause loosely here, by the way. I'm just using cause to mean explanation. Yeah, actually, we can just use explanation. So if God is necessary, and God necessarily, and God is the sufficient explanation for his will, then God's will is necessary. I.e., you can't have God without having God's will.
I don't see how that follows.
Okay, so is there a possible world in which God exists, but God's will is not what it is?
You mean like God didn't will anything?
Or God willed something different?
Yeah, it's down to him.
Oh, okay. So if there is a possible world where God willed something different, then merely God existing is not sufficient to explain why God willed what he willed.
Why?
Because what sufficient means, what a sufficient explanation is it accounts for why the consequent is the way it is. If there's some other way it could be, even in the presence of God, even in the presence of just God existing, then that means that there's something else that accounts for that difference, for the different way that the will could have been.
No. I'm saying that it could have been different, but that doesn't imply that.
Okay, so what accounts for the difference?
Necessary.
What accounts for the way that it is this way rather than some other way?
It's just down to God.
It can't just be down to God, because God is present in both cases, where it's this way and where it's that way. So it can't be that God is the thing that distinguishes between the two. So what distinguishes between option A and option B?
He has free will.
You can't believe in the PSR and also believe in free will. Those two things are mutually incompatible.
Why?
Because the free will says that there is no sufficient reason for some contingent things.
I thought no. I take it as just like we have self-awareness and then we can make choices.
Well, look, either those choices are contingent on some facts of the matter, like, I choose Reese's Puffs over Cheerios because I like Cheerios more than Reese's Puffs. But then it's not. Then there is a reason why I chose that, rather than just some like uncaused reason or unjustified or uncaused reason.
Right. But that doesn't. It's just outside of our comprehension.
Okay, so now you're appealing to skepticism. You're just like, yeah, we just can't understand how it works, but it does.
Yeah.
You understand that that is very uncompelling to anybody who doesn't believe in God, right?
Well, a brute fact would be less compelling than that.
Yeah, if you believe in libertarian free will, you believe in brute facts.
Yeah, I'm just saying brute fact for the explanation of the universe.
Look, you believe in brute facts, so you don't get to criticize somebody else for believing in brute facts.
No, I'm saying for the explanation of the universe.
Right, the explanation of the universe in your view is a brute fact. It is that God chose to make the universe rather than God not choosing to make the universe. That's a brute fact. There's no explanation for why that's the case.
Then we're still adding an explanation for the universe, which is God. Even though his explanation would be
that's not a sufficient explanation. The sufficient explanation, or there isn't a sufficient explanation for the universe existing, actually, in your worldview.
Wait, you confused me. Slow down. Can you repeat that?
In your worldview, if you're positing that God has libertarian free will, and God created the universe, and God created the universe using his libertarian free will, then in your worldview, there is no sufficient explanation for why the universe exists.
No, it's just we wouldn't be able to comprehend it.
Okay, so you're telling me that there is an explanation. So he doesn't have libertarian free will?
No, there is an explanation, but we can't comprehend it with our finite minds.
Wait, so does he have free will or does he not? Does he have libertarian free will or not?
His will we can't comprehend.
That's not answering my question.
Yeah, no, my answer is I don't know. Like, I can't comprehend that.
So why don't we just do both? Why don't we examine both cases? Suppose that he has libertarian free will.
But well, I don't think that would help us because
it's a true dichotomy, right? He either has libertarian free will or he does not have libertarian free will. It's a true dichotomy, so we can just examine both cases.
But we can't even comprehend that stuff.
We can just examine both cases. It's a true dichotomy. It applies to everything in the universe. Everything either has libertarian free will or it doesn't.
I'm saying we can't fully comprehend that stuff, so we don't know if it's a true dichotomy.
It's either A or not A. That's a true dichotomy. Either A has libertarian free will, or B, or not A, does not have libertarian free will.
Yeah, and I'm saying we can't.
That is a true dichotomy. I'm sorry, that's a true dichotomy.
Yeah, I'm saying we can't fully comprehend consciousness. So when
that's
you put it in a box,
it's still a true dichotomy.
We can't put it in a box if we can't comprehend it.
We don't need to put it in a box. It's a true dichotomy.
How? But how?
Because it's A or not A.
Yeah, but if you can't comprehend it, then you can't do dichotomies. Because there could always be a third option that you don't know.
No. Is there a third option between red and not red?
Again, when you're applying it
answer the question, scumbag. Is there a third option between red and not red?
What's the reason for the ad hom?
Because you're dodging.
No. I'm trying to give you an explanation, but like
this isn't an explanation. You're just saying nuh-uh when I give you a true dichotomy.
No, yeah, free will. You can't compare free will and red.
Literally, I gave you a true dichotomy. A and not A, or A or not A, is a true dichotomy.
Okay, can you comprehend your consciousness, yes or no, fully?
I don't even know what that question means.
Can you fully comprehend what your consciousness is?
In some sense, yes, kind of by definition.
Okay, so when you implied in some sense, that automatically means
it just depends on what you mean by truly comprehend, and it's also not clear what you mean by consciousness. My point is I gave you a true dichotomy. Do you disagree with the law of excluded middle?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I'm just saying
then I gave you a true dichotomy,
brother,
and so it has to be one or the other. There's no third option. That's what the law of the excluded middle says.
Do you understand? You're just interrupting me whenever I'm trying to give you an answer.
You're not you just contradicted yourself. On the one hand, you said that you agree with the law of the excluded middle, which means that if I present you with an A or not A, that proposition is true. Either A or not A, one of those things is true, is a true sentence. And so you can't then go on to say that there could be a third thing that you don't know about because you accepted the law of the excluded middle.
Just listen to me. What we're applying this logic to, we can't fully comprehend. So
can we apply logic
to God?
We can never
be certain. No.
Oh, okay. So your God is illogical?
No.
Oh, but you can't apply
logic to it. What do you mean by illogical?
I mean, doesn't follow the laws of logic.
Wait. Hold on. You mean he's outside of logic, or he contains logic?
That he doesn't follow the laws of logic.
No, he's outside of the laws of logic.
Okay, sounds illogical to me. Look, Ryan, if the God that you're trying to convince me of one requires that I suspend my belief in the various laws of logic, you're not going to make a convincing argument.
Wait, you believe this universe came for no reason? That would be outside of reasoning and logic, right?
No, I don't. That's not my view.
What do you believe then?
I'm pretty agnostic about the origins of the universe, whether it had one, whether it's always existed, whether it's eternal, whether it's not eternal. I don't have a firm belief in the origins of the universe.
Are you not agnostic then?
No, I don't think that a god did it.
Yeah, but why?
I've given you reasons. I've given you at least 2 reasons, actually.
Can you give me one more?
Yeah. How about the evidential problem of evil?
Well, first of all, like with the problem of evil, you don't have a reason. You can't decide what is evil and what is not, like without objective morality.
Who says that I don't have objective morality?
Well, I've just heard atheists don't have objective morality.
You've heard wrong. Plenty of atheists have objective morality. You can argue it off of the existence of agency. You can argue it from the existence of rationality. You can argue about objective morality from the existence of pain and pleasure. There are plenty of ways that you can construct objective moralities given an atheistic worldview.
But do they necessarily follow? Are they conditional or not?
It depends on who you ask. Some of them will say absolutely they will.
Okay, so it is conditional.
Conditional and objective are not antonyms. Now, just to be clear,
yeah, I know.
It's just to be clear. Do we agree that the God that you believe in requires that you suspend logic?
What?
Does belief in your God require that you suspend logic for at least one object in reality?
We can't wait. You know that the topic is outside of logic already. So
I don't know,
that makes no sense.
Are you telling? Look, if your worldview necessitates that I'm like, I believe in something that doesn't obey the law of the excluded middle. It's not going to be convincing. I'm sorry.
Can we logically prove God exists or not?
I don't think you can because I think it's false.
Okay, so or not. I said or not. So.
Oh, I mean, like, yeah, you sure can. It depends on the premises, of course, because that's how deductive arguments work. But yeah, sure.
Is it universally sound?
I don't know what you mean by universally sound. Do you just mean is it sound?
Like, is it conditional? No. As in, like, would everyone accept it? Like, would everyone have
probably
to
not, because some people will be wrong.
No. Not that they're wrong. It's like.
Well,
are they forced to accept it?
To steal an Ianism, just because the stupid kid believes that 2 + 2 = 5 doesn't mean that it's subjective that 2 + 2 = 4.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, is it conditional?
Every single logical argument is conditional on its premises.
No, are the premises?
That's what a deductive argument is.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm saying, are the premises? Yeah, can people disagree on them?
Yeah, people can also disagree that 2 + 2 = 4. That doesn't make them false, right?
Can you logically prove your premises?
Yeah, probably. But again, that would be yeah. So you could always Ryan,
can't by necessity.
Ryan, you can always construct a deductive argument for whatever premise, especially if the premise is true. You can always construct a deductive argument for it. But those deductive arguments will then further rely on additional premises, right?
Okay, so we agree that whatever we're trying to debate about is outside of logic.
No, it's not outside of logic. Logic is the way that you go from premises to conclusions.
How can we logically deduce the fact that there isn't a God?
What do you take logic to be? Because I have a feeling that you don't know what it is.
It's like a formalized system of discovering truth.
No, it's a formalized system of associating axioms or hypotheses or premises to true conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, I'm sorry, not true conclusions, to conclusions that follow from those axioms, hypotheses, or premises.
Mm-hmm.
So if the hypotheses, axioms, or premises are true, then it follows that the conclusions are true. That's what logic is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, do your arguments against
they absolutely do that, yes.
Do they follow 100% of the time?
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate one?
Yeah, sure. Premise 1. If causes are purely temporal things, then the universe... I'm sorry, I wasn't done. Then the universe could not have been caused. Premise 2.
Stop at premise 1, because we could do this quickly.
Are purely temporal things. Conclusion. The
I'm
universe
just
could not have been caused. That is a perfectly logical, deductive argument to show that the universe could not have been caused.
Can you prove that all causes are temporal?
That wasn't what you asked. You asked, can I show you an argument where if the premises are true, then the conclusion follows? And I did.
Yeah, I'm arguing that premise 1 isn't true.
That's irrelevant for the thing that you asked for.
Okay, so then it follows that your argument isn't 100%, like, it doesn't 100% work.
Not all deductive arguments have to have true premises. They merely must be valid. This argument is valid. Now, you could debate whether the premises or whether the argument is sound, but that's not what you asked for. You asked
that's my point.
for whether or not there is a 100% logical argument that I could present, and here is one. This is one that if the premises are true, then the conclusion follows 100% of the time.
Okay, but you could do the same for God.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so then why would you believe that God doesn't exist based on that?
Because I think that the premises are true in this case, and I don't think that the premises are true for your arguments for God.
Okay, so then tell me, is this your strongest argument?
I mean, this is a very loose version of it, but it's the one that's one of the most compelling for me, yes.
Yeah, okay, so if you can't prove all causes are temporal, then surely you shouldn't believe
We have very good reason to think that causes are purely temporal things. In fact, literally every single piece of evidence we've ever seen is evidence for the second premise.
Okay, but then I have good reasons to believe everything, well, all the proves God.
Sorry,
like,
one more time, what's the reason for
belief.
that? What's like, I mean, so clearly, like, all of the causes that we've ever observed are purely temporal, right? Okay, so can you give me an example of the presence of order, how the presence of order means that there's a God?
It doesn't necessarily mean.
No, I know, but what's the evidence for it? What's the evidence that what's the evidence for the claim that
intelligent designer.
Let me finish. What's the argument for the statement that all orderly things are caused by intelligences?
Because it shows design.
The evidence there. Sorry, what's the evidence?
Because it shows design.
No, what's the evidence, like, in the world? Like, in the same way that we have evidence in the world that causes are temporal, like, you know, we push on something that happens at a certain time, and then it moves, and that happens at a certain time. What's the evidence that orderly things only originate from intelligences? What's the evidence for that?
Yeah, wait, so now you're asking me a different question. I'm asking you what you said.
I'm asking you what you said exists. I said that all of the evidence we've ever had points to the truth of premise 2, namely that causes are purely temporal things. And you said, well, we could do the same thing for order and the existence of God. And I'm like, okay, so what's the evidence?
Yeah, the fact that we can see order in the universe.
Look, you need to make the connection between order and intelligence. The connection between cause and temporality, that connection is present, and we have that evidence everywhere in our observational world. Where is the evidence that order is connected to intelligence everywhere in the observational world?
Well, you can infer
without
from the
begging
design
the questions,
that there was a
by the way.
designer.
How can you infer that? What if I give you an example of a case where there's something that doesn't have an obvious designer but is orderly?
Well, you see paintings and you assume there's a painter.
And I see crystals, but I don't assume that there's a crystal maker.
Well,
crystals are orderly. You know, crystals that like grow in caves. Crystals are orderly, but they have a purely naturalistic, non-intelligent cause.
Yeah, but what's the cause for those causes?
Well, now you're just pushing the question back. The point is we have a proximal cause, which is not intelligence, right?
What do you mean by proximal?
Meaning the immediate cause, the direct cause, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying the indirect causes still.
Okay, but we don't have any evidence for the indirect causes, for the ultimate indirect causes of anything. We don't know anything about that. Like, okay, you could say, for example, for a painting.
So then you agree?
For a painting,
just contradicted yourself.
I definitely didn't. For a painting, the proximal cause.
You said there's no evidence for the ultimate reason of anything, but then you're saying,
absolutely.
God doesn't exist
my
with
point
logic,
is the evidence,
which is a contradiction, no?
The evidence, there is no evidence that order ultimately results or is ultimately caused by intelligence. We don't know what
you said there's no evidence of the ultimate reason.
Yeah, we don't have any evidence about what the ultimate reason is for anything. That doesn't mean that God did it. That doesn't mean that God is even possible.
So then why do you take that as evidence for against God?
You can have evidence against one possible ultimate reason without having evidence for any other possible ultimate reason. This is not a contradiction. This is saying that, well, we don't have any evidence that it's A or B or C, but it's not Q.
Well, what's the evidence for that?
I've already given you the argument.
Yeah, but you can't prove that.
Premise one. Premise two is wildly supported by literally every single piece of evidence that humans have ever looked at.
Well, you believe well, I can't say you didn't say you don't know, right? But you said you don't know, so what if you believe the universe is eternal, that means something's being eternally caused?
No. I wouldn't say that the universe I wouldn't say that the universe can be caused, period.
What?
I don't think that the universe can be caused, period, as concluded by this syllogism.
No, the parts in the universe are eternally caused.
I don't know what that means.
Like, there's cause and effect in the universe that exists eternally.
Yeah, you would have an infinite chain of cause and effect in our universe. Yeah, if our universe has always, if our universe has existed eternally, then yeah, there'd be an infinite chain of cause and effect in our universe. Sure.
Yeah, and well, something eternal is outside of time.
No, it's not. It's eternal. It's literally in time.
Well, no, because it doesn't have like a set, well, a set basically.
I have no idea what that sentence means.
It's an infinite set.
Okay, you can have infinite sets.
Yeah, but then time would be the difference between 2 points in a set.
What?
The time would be.
You seem increasingly confused.
No, I'm saying if well, you say time is just change, right?
No, that's not my view of time.
What's your view of time?
Time is one of the 4 dimensions of space-time.
But you just use time in your definition.
No, I use space-time in my definition.
What's space-time?
Space-time is well described by a 4-dimensional manifold with a Lorentzian structure.
What's that last bit?
A Lorentzian structure. It's a particular mathematical thing.
Like, of the 4 dimensions, yeah. Okay, so wouldn't that Lorentzian structure, like, be time itself?
No. The Lorentzian structure is just a relation between space-time events.
Yeah, wouldn't that be time? Because
No.
it's the relation between those events.
No, time is one dimension in the space-time.
In the space-time. Okay,
Yeah.
and the space-time is just 4 dimensions.
It's a 4-dimensional thing with a Lorentzian structure, yeah.
And so this dimension is time.
Yeah,
Just
one of the 4 dimensions is time, yeah.
And then the dimension is just what's the dimension to you?
A direction of possible travel.
And then it just keeps on going down. What's the direction?
Maybe just enroll in a differential geometry class?
I'm just trying to show you how it boils down that your argument doesn't necessarily follow us, which is my whole point.
Okay, well then actually make the argument that it doesn't follow rather than just asking basic definitions that you learn in a differential geometry class.
I already have. You said you couldn't prove that all causes are temporal.
To be clear, there are different ways that we can come up with reasons to believe certain premises. So one of the ways that we can come to reasons to believe things is you accept a certain set of premises and then you deduce from those premises a conclusion. And so you have reason to believe the conclusion. A second way that you can come to a reason to believe something is inductively. You see that the premise that you're examining is true in all of the cases you've ever examined, which gives you inductive reason to believe that the premise is true. There's also abductive reasoning, which is inference to the best explanation. You see some fact about the world, and you try to come up with the best explanation for why that thing is the way it is, and the best explanation that you can come up with, maybe you would then have good reason to believe that good explanation or that best explanation, because you need something to explain that thing you observe in the real world. So the thing that I'm using to justify the second premise is induction, namely every single Every single cause we've ever observed in the history of humanity, in the history of the universe, is temporal, which gives us good reason to think that causes are purely temporal things.
Can I ask you a question?
You can.
What kind of evidence would compel you that God does exist?
I don't know, a strong, convincing argument, not just being confused about what my arguments are.
Yeah, what is that? What's the strong, convincing argument?
I don't know, you'd have to present one.
So you have no criteria?
Look, arguments are either convincing or they're not. I can't tell you what about it. I can't tell you exactly what strong, convincing argument would convince me. Otherwise, I'd already be convinced. Like generally, if the premises are basically
you could just be like
reasonable. If the premises are reasonable and the conclusion is, if the premises are reasonable and the argument is valid, then yeah, that would be a convincing argument.
I just think that you're not reasoning properly if you haven't come up with a criteria for the evidence that would convince you, right?
Okay, what is the evidence that would convince you that a God doesn't exist?
Okay, firstly, let me think. I've never been asked that.
You must not be reasoning properly.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't remember the criteria that I came up with. I'd have to. I think multiverse to be proven, or something before the Big Bang.
Something before the Big Bang. Ah, well, aren't you in luck? The vast majority of cosmologists think that inflation happened before the Big Bang, and that there's evidence for it too.
What do you mean?
There's evidence for inflation, which predates the Big Bang.
Well, isn't the Big Bang the inflation?
No, the Big Bang is the thing that happens after inflation.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about something before the inflation.
There is no before the inflation, at least according to standard cosmology. Inflation has been going on forever.
Yeah, is there evidence for that?
Yeah, sure. Go read all of the papers on eternal inflation.
Wait, so you can't actually give me evidence?
I mean, like, the mathematical structure of inflation is like derivable, and it's consistent with the observations that we have, and that's evidence for eternal inflation.
Yeah, but that would be evidence for God as well.
Oh, okay. So evidence for there being nothing before inflation is evidence for God?
Because God...
If there's evidence for there being nothing before inflation, then that can't be evidence for God, which would have to be before inflation.
Yeah, just listen. God would will this universe with his infinite power and wisdom. So
okay, so it sounds like the thing that you proposed as the thing that would convince you otherwise actually wouldn't convince you otherwise, because I just told you about the evidence for it, and you're like, but that's also evidence for God.
No, you haven't given me evidence for it.
I told you about it. I mean, like, if you want to see the evidence, you have to go read the papers, because like I can't show you the numbers right now. That's like they're buried deep in the papers. You can go read them.
Yeah, no, I'd ask for proof that the universe. There is a multiverse.
To be clear, you asked for something before the Big Bang, did you not?
Yeah, but that's my misunderstanding.
That's your misunderstanding?
Yep.
Okay. So, what is the actual thing that would prove it? That would convince you?
Proof that the multiverse exists.
What if the multiverse doesn't exist and there's some other explanation?
Well, then that would make theism more likely, no?
No. What if there's inflation or multiverse or God is not a true dichotomy, right? You could have, like, for example, you could have like a cyclic universe with ever-changing constants, for example, and that would be not a multiverse, but it also doesn't have anything to do with God.
Yeah. Okay. Proof for either of those then.
So proof for any piece of any cosmology that doesn't have a beginning?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're in luck. Literally, most cosmologists think that there isn't a beginning, and if you ask them, they will give you tons of evidence.
Yeah, no, but that's not proof.
Wait a minute. So I thought we were talking about evidence, not proof. Are we talking about evidence? Are we talking about proof now? Because then, sure, the thing that will convince me that a God is real is proof that God is real.
But wait. I'm not asking for proof that God isn't real. I'm just asking for proof
sure.
that the universe.
I would like proof that God created the universe. How about that?
Okay, so with that, you can't really observe His will, right? Because that would be consciousness. You can't observe consciousness.
I mean, in some sense, we can only observe consciousness, but go off.
Yeah. So obviously, like, we can never have a complete theory of everything. It's always going to be incomplete.
Well, I don't think that follows.
It's Gödel's theorem of incompleteness, no?
No, it doesn't apply to physics.
Well, so you're saying there's like a most fundamental substrate that everything came from.
There could be.
And that in my point of view, that just like seems more absurd than something.
I'm sorry, something seeming absurd is not particularly good evidence or even proof.
Wait, when did I say I could fulfill that? I'm just like debating you.
Okay, so it sounds absurd to you. I was asking for the proof that God created the universe. And are you saying that you can't present that?
I'm saying what you're asking for is illogical.
Okay. Well, so
because you can't observe a will.
Oh, so there's no way to prove it without so you're telling me that there's no proof God created the universe?
Yeah.
Oh. Agreed.
Yeah, okay, so then what's your criteria?
Well, I mean, like, if something's true, you should be able to prove it, or at least you should be able to provide really strong evidence for it. But your criteria, to be clear, your criteria for not believing in God is proof of something that is perhaps fundamentally unobservable.
Okay, right? So if you're saying it's perhaps fundamentally observable, that's my argument. Hold on.
We don't operate on proof, we operate on evidence.
That's what I just said as well. It's fundamentally unobservable.
Right, so asking for proof is irrational. Asking for evidence is fine.
So when you ask for proof, wouldn't that be irrational as well?
I was parodying you. I was parodying you, Ryan.
Okay, so you don't actually want... So then tell me your actual criteria.
I want evidence. I want strong evidence that God exists. It can be in any form.
I don't know what you mean by strong evidence. You see what I mean?
Okay,
like,
you don't know which word are you having trouble with?
Strong, that's subjective.
Okay.
What's strong to me could be weak to you.
You're right. So what I mean by strong is an argument that has unobjectionable premises and is valid. That would be good.
So basically proof.
No.
If you can't object to the premises, that means they're valid.
That's not what unobjectionable means. Unobjectionable just means like, yeah, it's like believable.
Well, unobjectable, I just read that as you can't object.
Okay, well, I'm telling you what I meant by it. I'm telling you what I meant by it.
So, but that's still subjective then.
Yeah, the way that we form beliefs is subjective. You're right.
Okay, so then you agree that you can't create a criteria just like me.
You were the one accusing me of being what did you say?
No, I didn't say you were ignorant. I'm just saying like
No. You said logically inconsistent or something because I couldn't give you an objective criteria. Sorry, that's not how humans come to beliefs.
I don't remember saying that. I don't know. I mean,
look. If you give me evidence, and I will evaluate whether the evidence is compelling or not. That's the best you can do.
That's subjective, I'm saying.
Yeah, the way that we come to beliefs is subjective. Sorry, Toots.
Yeah, I'm saying then maybe you're just not as open-minded as you should be.
I could say the exact same thing about you.
And then we can have a discussion about it.
That's what we've been trying to do, but you haven't presented any evidence.
No, I'm attacking your evidence against God, remember? I'm trying to get you to be agnostic.
Then you're not following the prompt.
I'm an agnostic theist. Are you an agnostic atheist?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're both equally open-minded in this case. Yeah. So now let's see why we aren't both just agnostic.
Yeah, why aren't you agnostic?
Because I feel like my consciousness, I'm an idealist, right? And so I feel like just assuming other than my consciousness exists is like I would need justification for that. But then again, for me to assume that there is an infinite mind from which my mind came from seems very logical to me.
So just vibes?
But you're gonna say just vibes as well, right?
I'm sorry.
Like
That doesn't
I
answer my
gave good
question. So
reasons.
is it like you're just like, well, you know, it just seems logical that like, you know, if I have a mind, then there's an infinite mind.
Yeah, because
How does that follow?
well,
Where's any of the connective tissue there that gets from I have a mind to there exists an infinite mind?
because well, like something has to be eternal, right?
Why?
Because wait, if something isn't eternal, right, that means something came from nothing.
No. That's not a true dichotomy.
So, okay, explain how it's not.
Yeah, you could have a timeless state that is ontologically prior to a timeful
that would be
state.
the yeah, no, the timeless state to me would be the eternal thing. That's
Okay,
what
but
God
it's
is.
not eternal because it doesn't exist in time.
Yeah, then I can't say God is eternal then.
Yeah, you would
sense.
say God is timeless. That's what you should
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So a timeless mind.
Yeah, and I think that that's a little bit incoherent. Minds are things that
Why?
exist in time.
But then there's something that is timeless, no? Something
Yeah,
timeless still has to
I would
exist.
say that I would say that like there's like space that's timeless, and you know perhaps some kind of fields that are timeless.
Isn't space just space-time to you, know?
It's a type of space, or space. Sorry, space can be a subset of space-time, but it doesn't have to be. There could be purely spatial, non-temporal space.
So, for me, that's just saying nothing, right? Because to me, like
It might sound like that if you don't know what I'm saying.
Because the space, how are you defining it? You're just saying it's not temporal, right?
There are like just geometric ways that you can define these things. Like a space would
So
be like it would be a you know a collection of sets with a topology attached, a distance function attached, etc. Like you can just define these things.
So you would believe that there's a timeless version of that?
It's at least possible. Like I mean, I'm agnostic about it. Maybe there has always been time. Maybe for every day there's a past day, but it's also possible that there was a first day.
Okay, so you think like there's a timeless like geometry field, right? That just existed, and then
it's at least
somehow
possible. It's at least possible.
Yeah,
I'm not willing to rule it out yet.
Somehow gave rise to time?
Yeah, ontologically, not causally.
Okay, how would that happen?
Geometrically.
Yeah.
So the non-temporal time, geometrically, at a certain place in the geometry, time begins.
Yeah, how would that happen?
I already explained it geometrically.
You just said at some place it would begin. Like,
Yeah,
I don't understand.
It's. I mean, okay. If you want to understand this, go read the Hartle and Hawking paper from like '86 or something, or '84.
Can you just give me like a few like?
How much do you know about Wick rotation?
No, nothing.
Okay, then you might have a hard time understanding this.
I'm kind of good at understanding things if you explain it.
Okay, so if you view space, if you view the entire, or if you view the entire universe as like a loaf of bread, and then you imagine that the end slice of the loaf is purely spatial, and because the end slice curves in a particular way, it makes the next slice be temporal. Well, that's just a geometric fact that because the end loaf of bread is curved, that means that the next slice must be temporal, and then you have a first moment of time. It would be that first slice.
And are you using the curve as an analogy, or would it
It's
be
a slight
the
analogy,
actual
yeah.
thing?
It's a slight analogy, but it is a geometric feature.
So just any kind of geometric feature.
It's not any. It's a very specific thing, but it's very hard to explain it to somebody who doesn't have a background in the field.
What kind of geometric feature would it be?
It goes from a Euclidean de Sitter to a Lorentzian de Sitter via analytic continuation of time.
I understand the Euclidean one. That's like the 3 dimensions, right?
No, this would be a 4-dimensional Euclidean.
Okay, 4-dimensional Euclidean.
4-dimensional Euclidean de Sitter space.
Yeah.
And 4-dimensional Lorentzian de Sitter space.
Can you go through the Lorentzian?
No, just take a differential geometry course. Like, it's not like this. This is a thing that is like it's fine if you don't get it. That's totally fine. it's not worth spending the time on. This is the thing that's been thought about for the last 40 years. Stephen Hawking was clearly not a dumb guy. He thought it was feasible. So like, I'm just going to ask you to believe me on this because I'm not going to spend an hour teaching differential geometry.
Okay, that's fine. But then, like, why is that more convincing than? Like,
I didn't say it's more
mind?
convincing. I said it's possible.
Yeah, no. To you, why is it more convincing?
I didn't say it's more convincing. I'm not more convinced by that. I just said that that's something that we can't rule out.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think is a more convincing answer than infinite mind?
I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic about whether or not it's that or whether there's an eternal past.
No. Now I'm talking about God. I'm saying instead of God, what is your idea of like
Not
how
God.
everything existed? Yeah, that's just a negation of God. That's not like telling me what.
I don't think that a God really explains much.
Well, okay.
I don't think it does much for our explanation of the universe. What is what?
But
it
is an explanation, right? Yeah, but it is an explanation, right?
No, not really. It doesn't explain anything. It's just God did it, but that doesn't provide an explanation for anything.
Because you have an idea of what God is, even though you can't fully define him.
I have no idea what that question means.
Like, you have an idea of what God is. So when someone says God did it, then you're understanding it through the idea of what God is.
Not really. I have no idea what it means for God to create the universe.
It just means like this necessary substrate, right? Or like mind.
I don't know what that means. I honestly don't know what that means. I think that like all this language about like necessary substrates and like ultimate foundations, I think that's all very confused.
Well, I think at the end of the day, semantics will like always be limited. You can never like fully define things. So then, what in your mind, what is God?
I think it's a confused concept. I think that what most people think of God is they think of it as like a divine person that like poofed the universe into existence.
Yeah, I don't really think he's a person, but I still believe he's personal.
I think that's what it means to be a person. Look, it seems like we're not really going to make any progress here, Ryan. So is there anything that you want to say to before I let you go?
Yeah, why aren't you agnostic?
We've already been over this. I'm an agnostic atheist.
Yeah, what's the atheist bit?
Yeah, I've heard convincing arguments. That's the atheist bit.
Okay, so you understand that's purely subjective.
Yes, yes, it is purely subjective. The way that we come to beliefs is purely subjective, whether you believe or you don't believe the arguments. That is a subjective position. Because, of course, beliefs are dependent on minds. Now, I have some super chats to read. I missed a bunch, but let's read them, and then we will move on to our next guest. From Tim Davidson with the $5, I believe water is not wet. It makes things wet. Just like fire doesn't burn, it causes burning in things. No, water's wet. Tim, again, thank you for the $5. Scold, don't do me no good. Teacher said pi r squared. I said no pi r round. Cobbler r squared. Okay, Tim. A Binary with the $10. Thank you, Binary. The world is a simulation. In software, to model the real world, you must make shortcuts because hardware is limiting. The speed of light and dark matter are some of these. That seems confused, unfortunately. But thank you for the $10. A Garba-Gaiman with the 2 Canuck bucks. Denying atomic wetness doesn't deny macro scale. Does it? Yeah. Okay. So that's exactly that's exactly right. Right. So we deny wetness at the foundational scale, at the atomic scale, and then we still have wetness emergent from the foundation. This is a different sense of foundation, by the way. It's not ontological. It's like compositional foundation, but it's still a sense of foundation. Garby-Gaiman again with the 5 Canuck bucks. Rational means subject A can do action rationalize to object C. The necessary mind is just subject A, not a god. It's a language shortcut. Oh, okay. I mean, that's one way to think about it. From Cradled Filth with the 2 Canuck bucks. Thank you, man. Do you believe in the idea of intelligent design? I don't. Garain with the $5. If a cat is in a superposition of dead and alive, and you are morally responsible for its death by are you morally responsible for its death by opening the box and collapsing its wave function? I don't think wave functions collapse. $5 from Kieran Dave. I'm very happy to learn. Very happy to learn. I nerd sniped you yesterday by pointing to Climb and Hug a paper. It's a real banger. Yeah, you did. Scrolling all the way down, Dom Frank with the $2. You don't have all the data. Why claim non-existent? Because there are good arguments for it. Kung Pao again with the $100. Thank you so much, Kung Pao. Hey doctor, I live in Asia and my kid decides to sleep in my room on the first chance. Could have a great back and forth divine intervention. Haha. Anyways, when did you become firm in your atheist police position, and what's the foundation of them? I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember. It just never seemed like it made sense to me. That's all. But thank you so much, Kung Pao. All right, let's bring up our next guest. We have a lot of guests in the guest box. Let's bring up Dinner. Dinner, how's it going?
Oh, hello. So are you like fully atheist, or
Yeah, I don't think that a god exists.
so there's zero probability that a god exists to you?
I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong about a lot of things. I just don't think it's true.
Okay, so what is a god to you?
A being that created the universe.
Oh, okay. My definition is quite off then. I
Okay.
don't think this argument would really do anything then. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, well, thanks for being here, Dinner.
Bye.
All right, let's talk to Villy. Villy, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing A-okay, Villy. Do you believe in a god?
Not in the general sense of like a religious deity or anything of that.
Do you
nature.
believe in a being that created the universe, like a supernatural, metaphysical being that created the universe?
Yeah, a being either. It could be a being or beings. I mean,
Okay.
It's,
And and why do you believe that? Like, why? And or better yet, why should I believe that?
well, essentially, I guess what I was, because I was conversing with your mods earlier in the chat there. And
Okay.
I was just thinking, like, for example, Newton's third law, where every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, you should be able to trace that back to one single action that had sparked basically everything that occurred.
So Newton's third law doesn't say that there's an action and then there's a reaction afterwards. Newton's third law says that every time you apply a force to something, there simultaneously is another force that's in the opposite direction. So there's no tracing back, right? It's not like a first force causes a second force, causes a third force.
Okay. Well, like, say for example, like there are chemical reactions that are constantly happening, right? And it's
Yeah, sure.
Like, if you could break down every chemical reaction that's ever happened and go in a reverse, like backwards in time, and figure out every chemical reaction, you should be able to trace all the reactions to one specific event, right?
Only if there was a first event, right?
Well, there's a theory of the Big Bang, and then you guys were talking about before the Big Bang. There's
Inflation.
yeah, exactly, like inflation. And I was just reading about it. It seems that there could be universes with different laws and things like that, right?
Yep.
So I guess my point would be, even though you go before the Big Bang, there's actions and chemical reactions that happen before, and they periodically go further and further back. And eventually you should be able to get to a point where, unless, I mean, you believe, I guess it's indefinite, right? Like
It could be. It's not clear to me that there is a first moment.
So I guess my argument would be that there would be a first moment where all this action, all this stuff does take place.
Why should I think that there's a first moment?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's difficult to say why exactly, but I would believe that there is a first initial moment, just because we could possibly recreate that situation in a lab right now, right? Where we could like super cool things and have it in a static position, and then influence it to make a whole set of different reactions, right?
I just don't understand what this has to do with whether there's a first moment.
I'm trying to trace everything back to like I guess the first moment. I don't know. What would be your argument that it's gone for and forever.
I'm agnostic about whether there is a first moment or whether there's not a first moment. I just haven't seen good arguments either way.
Well, I guess that's my argument, is that I believe that there would be a first moment, there would be a first action that would have sparked something, and I believe that first action would have been caused by something that we would call a god, essentially, possibly in a higher dimension or
But like,
whatever.
I mean, suppose like, you haven't really given me a good reason to think that there was a first moment, but suppose that I thought that there was a first moment. How does that mean that it was caused by a god? In fact, I don't even think it makes sense to talk about the first moment having a cause, because if it has a cause, then it seems like the cause would have been before it. And so there'd be a moment before the first moment, which doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of time, or it makes a whole lot of sense.
That's a good point. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but I mean, I feel like, or I would assume that there would be some kind of initial event that would have caused a first moment. You know what I'm saying?
Look, if something caused the first moment, then whatever caused it was before it, which means that it wasn't the first moment.
Yeah, what caused it from before would be something of like a higher nature that wasn't necessarily in a 3D space or affected by time, or
then it can't cause it, right? If it's not in time, then I don't know what it means for it to cause.
Well, it would have caused it outside of our three-dimensional spatial realm, right?
What does that have to do with it being? What does that have to do with it being the first moment as opposed to like earlier than the first moment?
I'm saying like there would have been some kind of being or some kind of force that would have affected our created a three-dimensional space and
okay, but then that just means that there was time before a three-dimensional space existed.
No, it could be possible that these entities or this entity works outside of time or our spatial awareness, or
well, maybe it exists outside of our time, but it still has its own time. So then the question is does that time have a beginning?
Well, if its time is infinite, then it wouldn't have a beginning. It would
so now you're saying time doesn't have a beginning.
Well, its version of time essentially wouldn't have a beginning if it's in a different dimension or
but doesn't
that
run into the exact same intuition you have that time should have a beginning?
Well, I mean, does time exist if nothing is occurring? Like time is just based on the fact that there are reactions happening at a certain interval of.
I mean, that's like a whole deep debate as to what time even is, but suffice it to say, in whatever notion time exists now, if you're saying that our universe has a first moment of time, and then you're saying that it was caused by something, and the reason why you think it has a first moment of time is just because it makes sense to you, but then it was caused by something that has its own version of time, but its time doesn't have a beginning, doesn't that also not make sense to you?
Well, I mean, I'm going on the basis of the fact that it shouldn't make sense because it's not within our understanding, right? But if
okay, well, why should you be able to understand the beginning of our time?
Well, because we know that things have occurred over a period of time, but we don't know where it begins. So if we have essentially
we don't know where it begins, so therefore it must have had a beginning? Is that the argument?
No, I mean, I'm getting tongue-tied here, but I guess if we could trace back to the beginning, then which would be very difficult to do.
I mean, it's also not clear that there was a beginning, right?
No, yeah, you're right. It could have been going on forever. I mean,
in the same way that you think that God time has been going on forever.
Yeah. I mean, that's just something I'd like to debate about, but I find it very interesting. I mean, I'm also agnostic
Questions about time are very interesting. I agree. I don't think that they get you to the existence of a god. In fact, I think that they probably rule out the existence of a god.
Why? Because you believe it's been going on forever.
No, because I think that causation is a thing that happens in time.
But that causation, it's always been going on.
Or, well, not necessarily.
So you wouldn't happen to know either, right?
My point is that I don't think it makes sense for something to cause time to exist.
Why do you believe that?
Because in order to cause time to exist, time must have not existed. Otherwise, it didn't cause time to exist, right?
So if there was ever a period of time where there were no reactions or there was no occurrences, then
you could still have time.
You could still have time? It's
yeah,
just
sure.
Nothing's happening. So what? Yeah. I guess that would be like time was frozen, essentially.
Or it would just be like a very boring, like, you know, when you're sitting at the doctor's office and nothing's happening, you're just sitting there and waiting. It's just really boring, but like time is still passing.
What kind of interval? Like, how would you measure it though?
If nothing was happening, then you couldn't measure it, because in order to measure it, you need a clock, and then the clock would be ticking. But that doesn't mean that like time itself isn't going. It just means that you can't measure it if you can't measure it, right?
When you say time isn't going, what does that exactly mean? There's nothing happening.
So look, it depends on how you understand time. But like, you can have a notion of time. You can have a notion of time, even in a static universe. Like, there's no issue with that.
So in a static universe, how would you know how much time has passed?
You would make it not static anymore by introducing a clock. But just because you can't know how much time has passed doesn't mean that time doesn't exist.
No, but we know that the Big Bang happened a certain amount of time ago because we
and the question is about what was before that, right? If there was a before that, which most people believe that there was. Most physicists, anyway.
So if there was something before that, but there was nothing occurring, then
it can still be the case that there was time before that, even if nothing was happening.
Okay. Well, yeah, I understand your logic and reasoning. So.
All right, Billy. Well, thank you so much for being here, Billy.
No worries. Thanks a lot, man.
Take care. All right, let's read some super chats. So we have $10 from Theosophical Wondering. If conceptual starting points can't guarantee, If conceptual starting points can't guarantee expectations, molecules cannot predict wetness, then the problem of evil collapses as it relies on the conceptual starting point of God's goodness to form its expectation. No, so this is a misunderstanding. So the point is that unless you have some chain of reasoning to get from a conceptual starting point to some consequent, then you don't have a reason to think that the consequence should be a certain way. But we do have a chain of reasoning to go from God's goodness to the inability to have evil, or at least like an evidential inability to have evil. Like, there is a chain of reasoning there. It's not just like, oh, God is good, therefore there can't be evil. No, there's like a chain of reasoning. It's like, given the way that God behaves and so on and so forth, right? From Smith, thank you for the $2. Agnostic equals lacks knowledge, atheist lacks belief. Yeah, sure. Although I would say that knowledge doesn't require 100% certainty, but yeah, sure. And $20 from Binary Ghosts. Thank you so much, man. I don't know why people keep trying to make God something that is a feature outside of the universe. If I remember correctly, the creation is primarily concerned with planet Earth and tangentially to the solar system and visible stars. Yeah, that's what it is in the Bible. However, we understand now that that's not all that there is, so people are trying to fit their God into the universe as a whole. Because if their God was only responsible for the solar system, it wouldn't be a very powerful thing. All right, let's bring up Proud Believer. Proud Believer, how's it going?
What's going on, Dr. Blitz?
Not a whole lot. Proud Believer, do you believe in a God?
Yes, sir. I believe in the Abrahamic God.
All right. Are you Jewish?
No, I'm Christian.
Oh, okay. You could have just said that. Okay, so what would you say is the most compelling argument you could offer me, an atheist, to think that Christianity is true?
Yeah, I'd like to offer you the fine-tuning argument offered specifically by Luke Barnes.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead and present it, please.
Do you want me to go in depth and like break down everything that you mentioned, or just give like the basis?
Well, why don't you start with a rough outline, and then we can get into the details if necessary.
Okay, I got you. My bad, I'm pulling it up in my notes.
Okay.
All right, there we go. You want just like the basic premises? I'm pretty sure.
And then we can go into the details. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's just that the universe is like finely tuned for life, like compared to the options available. Because the universe is finely tuned, it's more likely that there's a God or something like that. I don't know the exact premises. I actually don't have it written down for some reason. I have like all the notes and not the premises.
All right, one sec. Okay, so I just roughly sketched it out. It's just a brief summary, just to make sure that we agree. Okay, so you say the universe is finely tuned for life compared to the options available, and then you say if the universe is finely tuned, God is more likely. Conclusion: God is more likely. Okay.
Yeah,
So why do you think that premise 1 is true?
I feel like he provided good evidence using scientific literature. I can give you some of the sources if you would like.
I mean, sure, but if you just give me a source, then I'm just going to read the source and we won't be talking to each other. So is there a particular, like, set of reasoning that you can offer me here?
Yeah, I mean, he went in depth explaining like why he started at the building blocks, which is like why it's fine-tuned that atoms are even possible, like the likelihood of quarks and electrons coming together to form atoms.
Yep.
And then we went in depth breaking down how likely it is for those atoms to be sustainable fuel for stars.
Right. How are we computing these probabilities?
He said that he ran the math himself, so like I wouldn't be able to do it.
I mean,
right?
so
Look,
there's going to be an issue because we don't know what the probability space is for the constants being what they are.
Can you explain that to me in layman's terms?
Yeah. Oh, how are you running Luke Barnes's argument if you don't know the argument?
Well, so like I understand like. I'm not like a physicist, so I don't understand in depth like why the things are doing the things that they are, but I understand the argument the way that he laid it out, if that makes sense.
Look, so here's my issue. Here's one of my issues. I mean, I have a lot of issues with fine tuning. But just off the get-go, like we have we know that say the ratio of the up quark mass to the down quark mass is like a particular number. It's like 0.95 or something like this, right? Now, that's the value in our universe. But in order to figure out the probability that protons can form, in order for protons to form, it must be the case that the up quark mass to down quark mass is a certain rate, is in some range of certain ratio, right? So in order for protons to form, it must be the case that this particular ratio is within a certain range of values. And so in order to figure out the probability that a proton can form, you would need to figure out the probability that the ratio is in a particular set of is between a particular set of values. But what is the probability that that ratio is in that particular set of values? How do we calculate that?
Okay, that makes sense. You broke that down perfectly. I see specific. So I wrote down, like I basically just annotated his conversation with Alex Malpass. And the specific verbiage he used is he said, based on these sources cited above, they determined that the light quark mass is fine-tuned at 2 to 3%. If you want this process to make carbon the way it does in our universe, that 2 to 3% is compared to the value of our universe, which is a small amount compared to the overall set of possibilities.
Right, but look, so there's something buried deep in there, right? Which is that we know how likely the other possibilities are. Right? Like we have no information about that. And so like there's just like a straight up problem. If you assume a certain probability distribution for for what these ratios are, that's like an assumption that I don't know how we come to that conclusion. And so like that's one issue. A second issue is, what if I just posit a multiverse?
Wouldn't that support the ability of us being able to calculate if those constants are fine tuned or not, if we have like other universes to look at and study.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. So suppose for a moment that our universe is fine-tuned. Suppose that we have some way that we can calculate the probability, right? So like, I'm moving to a second contention that I have with the argument. The first contention is, I don't think that we have a good way to come up with the probabilities. But suppose that we can. Suppose somebody's come up with a clever way to figure out the probabilities, right? And then the question is, why are, and furthermore, suppose that it is the case that our universe is unlikely given those probabilities. So the question is, how did we end up in this universe that's unlikely? Well, there's one possible option is God made it this way. A second possible option is we're in a multiverse, and we just happen to be in one that has life permitting constants. So how do we differentiate between the multiverse hypothesis and the God hypothesis, given fine-tuning?
I believe the way that Luke Barnes laid it out is like, if you look at the way that the universe could turn out as like this roulette board, and you look at it from a naturalistic perspective, all possible universes would be possible or like actualized, right? And so the probability would be like extremely small. It'd be the smallest it possibly could be. Whereas if you look at it from a theistic worldview, it could only be one way or the other, because a maximally great being either would do it or wouldn't.
I don't know how that addresses my question. Look, suppose that every possible universe with different constants is actualized. Then most of those, presumably, will not be able to have life in them. So we will only find ourselves in a universe that can have life. And so of course we're going to find ourselves in such a universe, because we wouldn't be able to arise in a universe that can't permit life.
Wait, but how could you justify that we wouldn't be able to arise in a universe that can
if a universe can't permit life, then you can't permit living observers, because by definition, right?
Yeah. Okay. Do you mind if I switch to a different argument? I feel like that one kind of fell on its face.
Sure.
I'd like to offer the modal ontological argument.
Yeah, sure. Which version?
Plantinga's.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Give me the premises.
There's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated. Necessarily, a being is maximally great only if it has maximal excellence in every world.
Sorry, you'll have to be a little bit slower. I'm a fast typist, but not that fast.
My bad, I got you.
So there's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated. Necessarily, what was the rest?
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull up. I have like the notes of everything that they said, but then like not the premises. I don't understand why I don't. There's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated. If this necessary being is instantiated or like is existing in one world, then he's necessary in all worlds. Therefore, a necessary being, or this maximally great being, is necessary. I think it is.
Okay, yeah, sure. This is roughly the standard thing. It's not quite right. So you want to say there's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated. Two, so then you want something like two, a necessary being or a maximally great being. Great being is necessary. Then you want three. This would be conclusion. There exists a possible world where a necessary being exists, and then yeah, that's what you get, right? Something like this, and it follows from a necessary being possibly existent means that that it actually exists. Fine. On what grounds do you think that there's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated?
I feel like this would be like me leaning into other things, but I don't believe that there's grounding for transcendental things like math and logic.
Well, that doesn't really help me understand that there's a possible world in which maximal greatness is instantiated.
Well, that's what I was going to try and follow with. So like in my worldview as a Christian, I guess this is like me kind of like diving into my worldview, but like there's a being that's necessary to ground these transcendental things. That being would by definition have these maximally great properties. And so if it's possible that these properties can be instantiated, then it would make that being necessary. I'm not sure if that follows.
Well, the question is it possible, right? But secondly, you could imagine that there's a being that instantiates all of like the, logic and, knowledge and all of this thing, but is like not maximally good, for example. It could just be like neutral. It could be like neither good nor bad. It's just like, it's just like there to ground stuff, and then but it doesn't care whether you murder people, right? So like it's not clear to me at all that even if you grant the tag argument, that it follows that thing is maximally great in like the standard way.
Yeah, I've seen that argument. And literally in the paper that I read about Plantina's argument, that was the first thing that they gave.
I'm glad that I'm clever enough to reproduce an argument that somebody else came up with.
I just, like, in my mind, I don't know how to conceptualize that, because I feel like it follows that if a being is like the grounding of logic, this all-loving being, that it would like kind of follow that being wouldn't be possible to be evil or not.
Why would it be all loving? Because it how is grounding logic meaning that it's all, how does grounding logic mean that it's all loving?
I think it logically follows that if this being is not like, I know there's this like view where it's like not a personable being, right? It's just like this existence.
Yep.
But like if it follows that it's a mind, then it would make sense that if this mind is logical, that it would be a loving mind.
Why? Where's the logical connective tissue?
Well, it follows with like the I'm sorry, I know I'm fumbling around right now.
That's fine.
It follows with the other properties, right? Like maximally great.
Well, no, we're not assuming that it's maximally great. We're just assuming that it's the ground for logic.
Oh, okay. And then from that point, it was,
yeah.
Okay.
So suppose that something grounds logic, and maybe it also created the universe. Okay. How does that get us to maximally great?
What evidence do we have of a being in our universe that would be able to ground logic without like matching these other properties?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think that we have any evidence for that at all. But the point is like, you're proposing like some metaphysical supernatural thing. It doesn't exist within our universe, but you're proposing that there is this thing that is maximally great, and it grounds logic, and it created the universe. All I'm saying is take away the maximal greatness. It grounds logic, it creates the universe. Why does that imply it's maximally great?
I mean, even from like that argument, couldn't I just offer the same argument that I gave just with those properties?
You could say there is a possible world in which,
like, there's a world where there's a being that instantiates logic. It's necessary that in order for logic to exist, that it must be instantiated.
There's a possible world in which a being instantiates logic.
I'm coming with this on the fly.
No, you're fine. And then we say that a being which instantiates logic is necessary. And then C, there exists a possible world where a necessary being exists, and then conclusion again, a necessary being exists.
Which again, I feel like that description will match our world, right? So then it makes it more realistic.
Yeah. So like, plausibly this could work. I'm a little bit like, I mean, you would have to defend both of these premises. It's much less clear to me that a being which instantiates logic is necessary. And furthermore, suppose even if I grant premise 1 and premise 2, this doesn't have to be this doesn't have to be a thing with a mind at all, right? This doesn't have to be a thing that's capable of thought.
Yeah, and then from that point, I'm like having to provide justification for my religion. But right now, I'm just trying to prove to you that a God
exists. This doesn't even get you to a God. This gets you to like something that grounds logic. But like, it doesn't even have to have a mind.
I know I'm fumbling
it could be like math.
But
like this could be math that we're talking about.
Yeah, but we understand, right? At least in my worldview, because I think you're trying to do an internal critique, but I might be a little lost right now. If there's a like,
no, but to be clear, I'm not trying to do an internal critique. I'm asking for the justification. I'm trying to do I'm not really doing an external critique either. I'm just asking like, okay, why should I believe this?
This is like presuppositional, because obviously, like, I'm assuming that my worldview is true. But like, if my worldview is true and there's this being that is the grounding for logic, for mathematics, so on and so forth, like, I feel like it just follows that this being would have these properties. I don't really know how to provide justification other than at that point then providing justification for my religion. But then
I mean, okay, so suppose premise 1 and premise 2 are true. We get to a necessary being exists that grounds actually, we're a little bit, we're almost begging the question by calling it a being. Why don't we say there's a possible world in which something instantiates logic, right? And then we say something which instantiates logic is necessary. And so then there exists a possible world where a necessary something exists. Or why don't we say where something is necessary? And so then we just have the conclusion, something is necessary. Now, maybe, suppose that this argument works. I could just replace, like this isn't a god, right? This is something. We don't know what it is. It doesn't tell us it doesn't tell us anything about it. It could very well just be math, or it could very well be like the laws of physics, or it could it could be, or it could be the Platonic realm of abstracta. Like it what, this doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, I understand. If you don't mind, can I ask you a question? I know my argument's
sure,
falling flat on his face. I'm trying to understand. I've been recently doing research on fields, and as far as I'm aware, fields are contingent on space-time itself, right?
Yeah, they're kind of attached to it. Yeah.
And so I guess I know that those don't correlate, but if from my understanding, the only thing that could be infinite in an atheistic worldview is either the universe or these fields, right? I just want to make sure I understand that correctly.
I think that we probably shouldn't think of them as separate things. We should probably think of the universe as the space-time with the fields glued onto it.
Okay.
That is what the universe is. It's one thing. It's not space-time is separate from the fields. They're a whole bunch of because you can view space-time as a set of fields as well. And then the normal fields just take as inputs values of the other fields. So my view is you should kind of treat them all as a big block of a lump of stuff.
Okay. And so then, okay, well then now I'm a little bit confused, because as far as I'm aware, I know I don't perfectly understand the Big Bang, but long story short, the Big Bang started because there were these fields and something happened and it caused inflation to begin.
Yeah. So
wouldn't that be tied to time and space?
Space is usually, so it depends on which version of inflation you're working with, but in standard eternal inflation, space-time always existed, and the fields always existed.
What's the justification for that? I mean, I'll leave my argument if you can just.
The math just works. It just winds back all the way. You have a field in a de Sitter space, and that field is super energetic, and then as a result of quantum tunneling, you basically have that field drops to a lower energy level spontaneously in different places, and it kicks off big bangs in those places via inflation.
How did it do it spontaneously, though, if entropy can only remain the same in the system?
Well, so I don't really understand the question. So in this case,
entropy is the number of things that can happen.
No, I know what entropy is. I didn't understand. I think that it wasn't really. I don't think the question was phrased well. But look, so the point is that you have an incredibly low entropy universe, which is essentially empty except this super high energy field, which is wildly low entropy. It's not zero entropy, but very close to zero entropy. And then as a result of quantum tunneling, which is just a quantum phenomenon, that field jumps down to a lower energy level in random places at random times. And when it does that, it kicks off a big bang at that place.
I'm sorry, I just got a phone call, so
You're
I actually couldn't hear what you just said. You mind repeating the last 5 seconds?
Yeah. So the idea is that you have a universe, call it the de Sitter universe or something, that's filled with an ultra high energy field, call it the inflaton field, if you will. And it just existed eternally. Now, if the universe were classical, it would just do that, and it would be a super boring universe forever, sitting in this ultra low entropy state forever. However, quantum mechanics is a thing, and so this super high energy field can just spontaneously, as a result of quantum tunneling, just dump energy, at a particular place in a particular time. It can just dump energy into all of the other fields. It can quantum tunnel to a lower energy state and kick off a big bang there. And so it just does this in random places at random times.
So the reason I asked these questions is because I was going to try and get into a causality argument, but what is the evidence that these things are infinite?
Well, so
I don't know.
a de
I'm
Sitter
probably sounding
universe,
extremely dumb right now.
so a de Sitter universe, kind of by definition, is eternal to the past and future, and is compact. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be compact, but it's eternal to the past and to the future. That's just what a de Sitter universe is. So the eternal inflation model just is a model that's eternal, right? Now there are other models that are not eternal. Vilenkin's universe from nothing is not eternal, but it's just a different model.
Which one is the leading one right now? Because I heard you mention
probably eternal inflation is like the leading idea.
Because I know you mentioned like a multiverse like works mathematically, but it just doesn't conform to reality.
Who says it doesn't conform to reality?
I might be chopping your words up. I know you mentioned something about multiverse, and you said like mathematically it works, but something it just like doesn't work. In real life.
So I mean like so if you take eternal inflation as like true, which is roughly a mainstream view, then like it just follows that there's a multiverse, because every time the inflation kicks off somewhere, that's a new universe, right?
And there's just like this empty plane where inflation is just happening.
Yeah. So there's but it's not empty. It's filled with a super high energy field, but it's expanding so fast that it keeps the universes separate from each other.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean like cosmology is at a state right now where like there's a lot of disagreement generally. Like probably the most agreed upon is eternal inflation, but even then I'm not even sure if that has a 50% like consensus on it. Like it's just so fragmented right now.
Okay. Well, I apologize if you feel like I wasted your time. Like I'm trying to be intellectually honest.
You absolutely did not. You absolutely did not. I appreciate you being here.
If you don't mind, can I ask you a question before I leave?
Yeah, sure.
What, in your opinion, is the strongest argument or evidence that you've seen for a God?
So the thing is that's a hard question to answer, because it really depends on like what kind of priors somebody has. So a lot of people find arguments from design really compelling just because like things look that way, right? And like if you don't go too deep, like it's just a really compelling argument. Like, you know, we design computers, we design machines, and our body looks like a machine. So I understand that that's really compelling. I don't think it's a good argument for God in the sense that like it's not compelling to me. But again, I wouldn't be an atheist if I thought that there was like a particularly compelling argument. So it's a hard question to answer. I like fine-tuning arguments because they at least talk about physics and they try to use science rather than just kind of trying to use like intuition. But I still don't think that they're particularly successful.
Because like the two things that you offer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a third philosophical objection, which is the electrons and love objection, but I don't even think that's necessary.
Yeah, I read into electrons and love. It doesn't really make sense to me though, because I don't understand how you can like offer this possible universe while we're like contesting the existence of a God.
Well, roughly the idea is that God could have made a universe where instead of people, it's just electrons, and that they have feelings just like how we have feelings.
I guess I'm about on like how we can like talk about this possible universe where it's just electrons when we live in this universe where there's like humans. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the whole fine-tuning argument is predicated on the universe could have been different, right?
I see.
And so, like, if the universe could have been different, if God could have made a different universe, then the question is, why did he make this one?
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
But look, I'm going to let you go, Proud Believer, but I do appreciate you being here. You were super good faith, super intellectually honest, so have a good one, man.
You too.
All right, we have some super chats, then we'll bring up another guest. From Ekipo, with the 10 euros, to understand no boundary, imagine yourself standing on the North Pole. You'll have only one dimension to move south. Moving south, the geometry of the globe reveals a second dimension, east-west. That's one way to put it, but people have a hard time understanding that the additional feature of the geometry is temporal. But yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Garba Gaiman with the 5 Canuck bucks. To clarify, rational is a property of a subject that can rationalize. Theists use the confusion to declare the thing that has the property rational. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And from H.R. Christopher with the 5 reals, I think. I believe that in the universe, whether or not there is a God doesn't mean much, since hell and heaven were made by humans to control our behavior. That's true. A binary ghost with the $5. The 3 omnis are also a mistaken premise to start with. These are proclamations of worship, but are not there in the actions from the myths and stories. That's true. It's absolutely true. Yeah, you see God do evil things all the time in the Hebrew Bible. You see God lose in the Hebrew Bible even to iron chariots, right? In the Christian Bible, I suspect that it's probably more in line with the three omnis, but that's because they were developing their philosophy. And then from Christopher again with the 5 or the 10 reals, I think. We could be a computer code, but religion is made for mass control humans. I've seen Quantum under a ayahuasca session. You can't say that. I don't think that we could be a computer code. I don't think that there's good evidence to believe that. All right, let's bring on our next guest. Let's talk to Tally Talks. Tally Talks, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Tally, do you believe in a God?
I do believe in God, and I was raised as a Christian, so a lot of my background.
Sorry,
Yes.
1 sec. There's some echo. So when I'm talking, I'm hearing myself. Are you on speakerphone?
No, I'm actually on my Rodecaster. Is it still work? Is it still doing it?
Let me check. Yeah, it's worse.
How about now?
All right, testing. Nope, it's worse.
It's echoing.
Yeah, I can hear myself when I'm talking.
I don't know, man. I'm on my Rodecaster, so I don't know.
I don't know what that is. What is a Rodecaster?
That's my audio board that I use with my microphone and everything.
So
Is it better now?
not really. Oh, it's a little better now.
Okay.
It's quiet, but there is still echo there, and so I'll just have to ignore it. Yeah, okay.
I won't keep you all day because I've been on both sides of this. I was raised as a Christian.
Sure.
I ended up going in my early 20s, kind of going more agnostic, you know. So I've been on both sides, and to be honest with you, on the far end, it's kind of like political thing. On the far ends of it, preachers, scientists, they all kind of sound the same in the end. But
They do?
I'm more of a yes, as far as like as far as like okay, for a preacher, it's like they have absolute faith in God. At least like say they have absolute faith in God. You know, but in the end, nobody has absolute faith in anything. And same thing on the other end. I mean, even you say you're an atheist, but I'd have to say you're more agnostic because you're saying, can you convince me that there's a God? If you can be convinced, I think that makes you agnostic.
But how does that mean that scientists and preachers sound the same? Like I've heard both, and they don't sound the same at all.
Well, they're both of them are so sure about themselves. Is what I mean. I'm not saying they're saying the same things.
I don't think
That's gonna sound the same.
What scientists are you talking about?
It's not a bad thing.
Well, no,
Well,
I think it's mistaken.
Well, that's how they feel about you too, though. That's what I'm saying.
That's how what?
A preacher. That's how a preacher would feel about you.
A
That
preacher would feel what about me?
You're misunderstanding. You're not understanding it correctly. And then the scientists would say,
what I'm saying is like scientists, like their whole goal, like the whole business of the scientific method is to try to is to form an idea and then do everything you can to try to prove it wrong.
Yeah. So
But that's not what preachers do. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in the end of all the things I've read Stephen Hawking's Universe in a Nutshell when I was younger. And
Good book.
Yeah, very good book. And he believed in basically not the Big Bang was more of two universes, separate universes colliding as a
No,
membrane.
that's Neil Turok and someone else.
Speaks of
That's
it
not.
in that book. Maybe
He
I'm
talked about
mistaken.
it, but it was not his position. No.
That's why I just saw it in his book and assumed it was him. But the pea brains and all that, I remember that. It's been decades.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, but in the end, I've come to the one that I believe that's more accepted, and that's the Roger Penrose's cyclic universe. You know, conformal cyclic cosmology, whatever he calls it. It's the triple C's. That's what I remember it as.
Right, but you believe in a God, so did you want to come? Did you come up to talk about why I should think that that's real?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I'm going to ask you some things.
Yeah.
So, how much time does a photon experience?
It's not a.
It doesn't experience.
Do you mean proper time or do you mean affine time?
Well, I mean time in the general sense that we're speaking of, as in if something's moving, anything that moves at the speed of light doesn't experience time. And
It experiences zero proper time, but there is a well-defined notion of affine time for even things moving at the speed of light.
The things beyond it are going at not that speed. Yes, I understand.
What?
But
I don't know. I didn't understand your understanding.
Well, if something's moving at the speed of light, and it's kind of like if something's moving at the speed of light, that doesn't mean that the things happening on Earth aren't still happening as it's passing or wherever it's going, right? time for us is different because we're not moving at the speed of light.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the point is that there is a sense in which photons have past, present, and future, but there's not a way that you can assign a specific duration for any given between two events for a photon.
Okay. Well, according to Roger Penrose, they do not experience time. Now, you can say you're smarter than him, whatever.
I've met him.
Okay, then you know what he said. Then you know that he
would agree with me,
believes
by
that
the way.
photons don't experience time, and in the end,
They don't experience proper time. They experience affine time. And he would agree with me on this. But go ahead.
Yes. So, if you don't believe in God, or if you believe in God of the Bible, which I'm not saying is right, I believe that they have it misconstrued too. I kind of believe it's a mix of everything. But that God is made of light. That's what they say. A lot of the religions around the world explain the gods of
the Christian God definitely is not made of light.
I'm not just talking about the Christian God.
Well, yeah, but that's the one you believe in, right?
Only the morals and values. You see, you're taking the whole other universe.
Well, look, if God is made of light, then God exists in the universe because light exists in the universe.
Yeah.
In which case, it couldn't have created the universe.
Well, it just would have been. I'm not even saying that the Bible's correct, but you do know that the gentleman that came up with the Big Bang was a Catholic priest.
he was a Belgian Jesuit, and he got really mad at the Pope for saying that his work implies that God created the universe.
Well, either way,
he wrote the Pope a very angry letter because, you know, the Pope heard about his work and then gave a speech about how scientists have proved the ex nihilo creation and cited his work. And then Georges Lemaitre, the guy that came up with the Big Bang, he wrote an angry letter to the Pope. He's like, that's not what I said.
So let me ask you this. Do you believe that the universe is eternal, or do you believe it's finite? What do you
I'm
believe?
agnostic about it.
Okay. Well, let's just assume you believe that the universe is eternal if you went that way, right?
Okay,
and,
sure.
And a lot of people go with the whole, there's a million, infinite amount of me's living the same exact life, a million or infinite different kinds of me's living different lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if everything can happen given enough time in a universe, right? You have to at some point accept that, okay, then there is a possibility that there's a God in the universe.
Well, no,
right?
It's not that everything can happen. It's that only possible, or that every possible thing can happen. But if a God's not possible, then it doesn't mean that a God would happen, even in
Do you believe
an
in
infinite universe.
Dimensions? Like,
well, I believe in at least 4.
Okay, but could there be a fifth? Do you believe there could be a fifth, sixth?
I mean, in
seventh?
principle, but we don't have any evidence to support it.
We don't have. You're right, but when you say that, there's a lot of things we don't have evidence to support.
Yeah, so we should remain agnostic about those things.
And that's basically what I'm doing. I'm not saying that there is or isn't a God. I feel like there is a God because of.
Well, then you're not remaining agnostic.
But
you're saying that you believe in a God.
We don't get to tell God how he does the stuff he does. We don't get to say.
So then you're not being agnostic.
I mean,
you said you were being agnostic. You're
agnostic. I'm just saying about the same way that you're saying you're agnostic about something, and then atheist in another way is the same thing I'm doing.
So I'm agnostic about whether or not the universe had a beginning. I'm not agnostic about whether or not a God exists.
I can't believe it had a beginning because I believe in Roger Penrose's idea. I've always had a kind of a feeling that it was some kind of cyclic universe, and I always pictured it more expanding out, collapsing back in. But after,
well, that's not what Penrose has, right?
No, that his is the opposite. It expands into forever, and basically, in a nutshell, photons themselves that expand out forever have no reference of space or time because they don't experience time, and they somehow expand themselves out into different universes, if you will. But that's still, to me, that's still part of the same universe. Just,
I mean, it's a little confused, but roughly. I mean, like, look, it just sounds like so why should I believe in a God?
Do you have kids?
No.
Let me tell you something. Go have a kid, give it a couple years, and then tell me what you believe.
My mom doesn't believe in a God either.
Well, I don't know what to say about that.
Sorry.
I'm telling you to go experience it yourself.
Well, you'll be the first to know. How about that?
Huh?
You'll be the first to know.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that if you're wanting a reason to believe in God, if you want to get into the Christian debate of it, the Christian God only gives you a couple demands. One of them is to go out and have babies. That's the biggest one. The other one,
Look,
a lot of people
I
get
just want to know why I
is
should think that this is true.
why you should think that it's true. Well, I mean, you don't have to, but why should anybody follow the theories of science? Why should we?
I don't have to, I guess. All right, let's talk to Evan. Oh, we have some super chats and then we'll talk to Evan. From Bankable with the $2, I have finally found and watched Unapologetic, 10 out of 10. Hey, cool. You guys should go watch Unapologetic. Nobody X Challenger, YouTube. Still waiting on the physics of throwing it back in a circle submission to your favorite journal. It's in peer review. Christopher with the $5. I believe that in the universe, whether or not there is a God doesn't mean much. Oh, I already read this one. And I read that one too. I don't know why it's being laggy. By the way, before I bring on the next guest, make sure to consider signing up for the Discord. So if you go to discord.gg/Dr. Blitz, that's the Discord server. As long as you're 18 plus, come join us. There's a pretty active live chat now. We have a great admin named Lilith, who's been significantly improving the quality of the Discord server, so it's a cool place to be. Also, make sure to subscribe to both YouTube channels if you're not already. One of them is Dr. Blitz, or sorry, one of them is Blitz PhD. The other one is Dr. Blitz Debunks. And third thing, if you want access to my debate notes, which I use on the regular, if you want access to my debate notes, then you should become a YouTube member or a Patreon member. It's like $4 or $5 a month or something. You get access to the notes that I use during my debates. It has like a whole bunch of, basically it's a compilation of like sources and facts and arguments and counter arguments that might be helpful for you if you're interested in this. And then final thing, just because somebody suggested I should, on Patreon, if you are like, and if you're not independently wealthy, you can ignore this. But if you're independently wealthy and for some reason you want to support, like you want to pretend that you're a medieval patron and like support like a wee little scientist like me by just like giving me money, there's like a super high tier called the Medici tier that you can like sign up for, and it's like super expensive, but I'll acknowledge you in my papers that I write and you'll get access to all of my stuff. So, you know, that's a thing that you could do, but it's irrelevant for most people. Anyway, let's bring on our next guest. Let's talk to Evan Hernandez. By the way, I just got my first Medici tier supporter, and they told me that I should advertise it more. That's why I'm doing it. Evan, how's it going?
Hey, I was listening on YouTube, and I saw this debate you were having, and I had a couple things I'd like to add to your conversations.
Yeah, sure.
But,
so do you believe in God?
yeah, I'm a Christian.
Okay, so what would you say is like the most compelling argument you could offer me for the Christian theism being true?
Well, have you heard of Professor John Lennox?
Yeah, I have. He's a mathematician who did set theory.
Yeah, he's a very good debater, and I listen to his debates.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a couple theories. He has a couple things that I thought I should bring up. He once had a talk with a doctor. He was a reductionist. He believes everything can be boiled down to physics and chemistry. And he talked to him. He's like, okay, let's well, they're at dinner. He's like, let's figure out, let's do a test right now. Let's see how this works, since you think everything can be reduced down to physics and chemistry because he's a reductionist. How does the words roast, or R-O-A-S-T, convey meaning, and how does it invoke the words on the paper to put an image in my head, and what are the semantics of it? And he tells him, he's like, you know, I've been thinking about that for 50 years. I've gone to my laboratory, but I tell you, it can't be done. There's no way it can't be done because it needs an intelligent input. There's no way for it to.
Sorry, who was the person he was talking to?
It was a doctor. He didn't specify who it was, but
What? I have a hard time believing that this conversation happened.
well, this is one of his stories, but it does make sense that if
It doesn't make sense that it doesn't make sense that a reductionist would say that. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well, if there's no other way to explain it. I've looked, and if you've looked about the same thing too, which I hope you do later, it doesn't. There's no way for something to linguistics to have meaning without intelligence. That's why it works, because we have brains that invoke it in the first
Yeah,
place.
so well,
Nothing in nature invokes that.
our brains are intelligent, so that's how we can do linguistics. If our brains weren't intelligent,
No,
then
no,
we
no.
wouldn't be able to
I'm
do
saying that
linguistics.
in naturally, it can't come about without an intelligent
Why not?
input, because it doesn't happen in nature. It's something
What do you mean?
that's more
Like, is
specific
that just like it just doesn't? Like, the question is where did human intelligence come from, right?
No. The question is, how do you get sophisticated intelligence without, like, from the Big Bang or with
Yeah.
from
So
evolution?
you just said no, and then repeated what I said. The question is where does human intelligence come from, right?
Yeah, it comes from someone who has intelligence,
Why should I believe that?
because humans put it into language. That's how language works.
So humans have intelligence, and hence we can use language. That doesn't really tell us at all about what the origins of human intelligence are.
Yeah, but if you were to say that that's a fact, that humans are the only ones that can bring language into existence, then how did our brains come to existence?
Our brains aren't language.
No, our brains are like, okay, well, it's a trick question. Nobody really knows how our brains came into existence, but how everything is organized and orderly and made in the earth, it brings in, okay, if humans, which are higher beings that have understanding with the brain, can bring something in, then why can't God be the one that made us?
Maybe that is the case, but it doesn't mean that that's the case. Just because we are intelligent and we can make things, it doesn't mean that we are also made by something intelligent. Now, maybe we are made by something intelligent, but it doesn't mean that we're made by something intelligent. That's just like an option.
No, well, how else do you explain the genetic code? It's built out of typographic order, which
It seems
is
like
basically
an
like
argument
linguistics.
from incredulity. No, it's not at all like linguistics.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly
what's the grammar?
letters and numbers.
What's the grammar?
What do you mean?
What's the grammar? Linguistics has grammar, right?
Well, it works out in sequences of digits and codes.
Yeah, so how is that linguistics?
Because it spells out what it needs to say in a language.
No. So
numbers.
linguistics is not just a sequence of stuff that does things. That's not what linguistics is. That's not what language is.
Okay, it doesn't have to be linguistics.
Okay.
But it works
what's the contention?
exactly. It works exactly like a language would work to tell certain things.
But it doesn't. Languages have grammar. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't communicate meaning, right?
It does. It invokes exactly what it needs to say throughout the language.
It doesn't say anything. It doesn't convey meaning. There's a word for this. There's a notion that like it can talk about past, present, and future, and far away and close. It can't do that. It's just a sequence of chemicals. Like it doesn't. There's no grammar. There's no meaning.
Okay.
How is this like a language?
From my understanding, the genetic code works like a language. But
I guess your understanding is incorrect.
Not to the it doesn't work to the extent of our English language, which would.
What language does it work like?
Well, if you have something that can evoke meaning through a sequence of letters or numbers or anything that chemically can say, like our voices use certain vibrations to make words that have meaning, then that's language enough for me, and I consider it in the same realm of whatever that is.
Are muscles
you don't
language?
Want to call it a language.
Are muscles language?
I would not say that they're language, no.
By your criterion, because muscles are things that wiggle around to produce language, therefore they're close enough to language for you. It should be in the same category as DNA.
I guess I haven't thought about that. Yeah, I guess it would be, since we are built in that sort of way, then I guess it would be language.
Right, but then literally like your tongue is language. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, because it has intelligent meaning behind it, because it invokes
No,
something.
the tongue doesn't have meaning behind it. It's not like a
the tongue is
concept.
moved by the brain. So if I tell it to do something, then it will. And
that doesn't mean that it has meaning behind it. The tongue is not a concept.
Well, our brains have meaning, and it moves the tongue. So it's not the tongue itself, but it's what's moving it.
So the things that have language are human brains. Human brains create language, rather.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not the DNA. It's not the DNA.
Ultimately,
the DNA is not language.
We don't understand how the brain works. Nobody knows how it is. Like,
I mean,
why
neuroscientists do. They have a pretty good understanding.
Don't understand. Scientists understand the how it works. They don't.
That's what you said. You said nobody understands how the brain works, and then you agreed that scientists understand how the brain works.
I meant did I mention I was tired? I'm very lacking sleep. So I'm trying to get my point across is that the genetic code is working like language because it's created by God, which would be us. So we create humans create letters, and we give them meaning to do certain things, to say certain things. God created us and give our code and genetics meaning to do certain things and to say certain stuff to make us.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the connection I'm making.
So I don't believe in God. So why should I think that DNA is language?
Because it translates to us the same as God would to making the genetic code, because there is no other.
I didn't understand that at all.
There isn't any other way you could come up with how the genetic code came to be.
How do you
figure? It just doesn't happen by itself.
How do you figure?
It does happen by us with language, though.
How do you figure that that there's no other way that the genetic code could have arisen?
I've looked it up. I couldn't find any other way that it. There's no nature doesn't just bring up. If you scramble, let's say you have.
Are you sure that this has never been we don't know how DNA could arise?
Yeah, because if you were to put, it's like how Darwin was disproven. If you were to put 1,000.
Okay, hold on, let me show you something. Here's a description of how spontaneous emergence of self-replicating molecules, read DNA. In this case, I actually think it's simpler than DNA. Containing nucleobases and amino acids can form. This paper.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, here's a way how it could happen. Doesn't involve God.
No, what? Okay. Have you ever heard Dr. James Tour?
Yeah, he's a hack.
He's
a clown, and it's really funny.
No, he's not. He can't be. No one can literally argue with him because
Mr. Farina.
What?
You should go watch Dr. James Tour completely crash out in his conversation with Dave Farina.
Dave Farina, I'll look it up. Okay.
It's really funny.
I've watched all of his stuff, and none of the scientists can argue with him.
You haven't watched all of his stuff because I just quoted one, and you didn't know what I was talking about.
Dave Farina, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. I guess I haven't seen all of it, but most of it, I'd say. But I do have another.
Look, I just gave you a paper explaining how self-replicating molecules containing nucleobases and amino acids can spontaneously emerge.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, but basically, that everything that we have that's built in us, it could not have started in a abiogenesis world.
This paper disagrees. We can even look at the abstract.
But everything that
we
was
now
built
show
in us,
how the interplay between these compound classes can give rise to new self-replicating molecules using a dynamic combinatorial approach. We report two strategies for the fabrication of chimeric amino acid nucleobase self-replicating macrocycles capable of exponential growth. The first one relies on mixing nucleobase and peptide-based building blocks, where the ligation of these two gives rise to highly specific chimeric ring structures. The second one starts from peptide blah, 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 blah. But the point is they're telling you how this can happen.
Well, this is why Dr. James Tour says, I refute what the people are doing because they're using everything that we already have is built into us to work and to replicate. So when people try to use an abiogenesis to build something new, they have to go to humans life form to build something that's cheating. You can't use already something that works perfectly and say, oh, well, we can make something else. That's not, you have to start from scratch.
No, this is a mechanism that doesn't require humans.
Well, if it's bio, it already works perfectly because we've been here and it's been working.
This is not a
perfectly.
bio journal. This is published in the Journal of American Chemical Society.
It is okay. It wouldn't be in
This is
our body.
prebiotic, right?
It is. Really?
Yeah.
Well, nothing that isn't biotic helps our bodies to.
I'm sorry. What do you think salt is?
No, not helps our bodies. As in, like, nothing that James Stewart said this already. Nothing that isn't already in place that makes our body like our genetic code. It's made to work to help itself. Anything that's chemical outside doesn't help build it. It's just there to help work with it.
This
Like,
paper
nothing-
disagrees.
Can you pull it up again?
Yeah.
I'll screenshot this and look into it, but I'm pretty sure that that's amino acids. I'll have to look into it, but everything that he said basically is that there's no way that I watched his whole like hours long of videos that he talks about, but that is just,
Well, surely if James Tour said it, it must be right.
well, I mean,
James Tour, famously not somebody who got his PhD in origins of life. James Tour, famously somebody who is an accomplished scientist as far as like metamaterials are concerned and inorganic chemistry is concerned, but knows nothing, at least has no expertise in the development of self-replicating molecules from prebiotic chemicals. That guy, right?
well, from what I've seen, I've watched a lot of his stuff. He's pretty spot on. So I mean, I guess we
Have
disagree
you
there.
checked?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked, I've researched him a lot. I've seen what
No,
other
not
people
him.
say
Have you
about him.
checked the things that he says and checked if they're true?
From my understanding of what he's saying, it all seems pretty true. Like
Right,
the
but
fact
have you
that
checked that they're true?
no one's been able to like refute what he says.
Have you? I'm sorry, that doesn't answer my question. Have you checked that they're true?
No, I haven't.
Have you like fact checked
gone through
him?
the science myself, but
So then you don't know if it's true.
well, I haven't seen anything to prove him that's not
I
true.
just showed you something.
Well, okay. Well, we can move on because I'm not getting
Okay.
anywhere here. So,
Okay.
all right. But anyway, so you don't find it compelling at all that about the brain and the relation to the linguistics, which would be the same thing as the genetic code. You don't find that compelling?
No, not at all. I don't think that the genetic code has really anything in common with linguistics.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up too. I mean, I swear there's some definitions out there that will correlate. But all right, okay. Second thing, how?
Oh, where'd he go? When you minimize the app, I can't hear you, by the way.
Oh shoot, my notes. Hold on. Okay, let me try to do it without my notes. And let's see. Have you heard what about the exponential growth in humans? What about that? Have you heard about that?
What about it? Oh, yes. You're going to say that if we assume the growth rate of the human population for the last 500 years or something is consistent back in time, then we wind up at 8 people 4,000 years ago or something like that, right?
How do you not agree with that? That's like
Because it's false.
I
It's
did
straight
the
up
math.
false. We'll do
okay.
it live. All right, let's go to our world in data, population growth. So how many years do you want to go back in order to find the population growth?
The Bible says that the flood was.
No, I mean, because we want
4,300.
to look up what the population growth is, right? At a certain time. So when do you want to grab the population growth from? Like, do you want to assume constant population growth from when until now? Oh, he's off the app. Can't hear you when you're off the app.
Hold on a second. I'm looking for it. Let me just give me 1 second.
Okay. There's a particular chart. I should really save this in my notes file, which you can get access to for $4 or $5 a month. Just saying. I know that there's a good chart here, but I just need to find it on this website. It's on Our World in Data. That only goes back to 1950.
I don't have the exact date on there.
Found it. Okay, so why don't we go back to the year 0, right?
I already have. Let me write. Let me just.
Okay, yeah, sure. I will work on my model. I've done this before. That's why I know it doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay. So when are we using the what dates are we using for our initial and final date? All right. Well, here's what we can do. We can just work with it. Well, we will. What most people cite is they cite the year 2. They cite the year 0. So if we look at the year 0, I'm getting this data from Our World in Data. If we look at the year 0, the population was 232.27 million. Welcome back. Did you pick your starting and ending dates?
Wait, did you hear me?
No, I can't hear you when you're off the app.
Oh shoot! Oh dang it. Okay, hold on. So my thing was, it was 4,300 years ago, and 70 something roughly. So I just rounded out to 4,300 from since the flood to today, which is 7 billion people. And if you double it every 120 years.
Oh, so we want to double every 120 years?
Yeah, simply double it every 120 years.
So 2 to the t over 120 is what we want to do. And so then what's our population today?
7.
Our population today as of 2023 is 8.09 billion. Yeah. So it's 8.09 times 10 to the 9th. So we're going to have it double every 120 years, and then we're going to solve for our growth function. And so we get that A is 68,090. So we have, so we want to redefine this as 68,090 times 2 to the t over 120. Great. Okay. So now we can just plug in P of 0. Let's see if this is correct. If we double every 120 years, at a constant rate, and we have a population of just over 8 billion in 2023, then at the year 0, this is, about 2,000 years ago, we should have a population of 68,000. Now let's just double check this. Let's just check if that's true. We can go to Our World in Data, which is a lovely website. Where is it? Here we go. Our World in Data. If we go to the year 0, it's supposed to have a population of 232.27 million. So it seems like if we doubled in population every 120 years, then it seems like we would get the wrong answer for how big the population was 2,000 years ago. So that growth rate is incorrect.
Oh, okay. Here's one that works from what I understand. So put in 3 billion people in 19.
Okay, we're doing it again. So we have
3 billion in 1964.
So 3 billion in 1964. We want 3, and let's just double check. Is that actually true? In 1964, it's like 3.19 billion in 1963. So I'll use that because that's the number I have. So it's 3.19 billion in 1963, and then we have 8.09 billion today, right?
No, put 7 billion at 2013.
Why can't we use today's population rate, today's population number, which is 8.09 billion?
Because I wanted to go off of exactly what I had on the note. But
Okay, but I'm going to use the actual numbers, but this should be roughly the same. Like the number should be close enough. Because you know, if what you're saying is true, then it should be extractable at all levels. So we have, oopsie daisy.
well, it should be roughly.
Hold on.
Right. You gotta account for like mortality, death.
Come on,
then
what are you
gotta account
doing?
for, like wars.
So
So you gotta round it up ultimately, but
P of t is. Hold on. Let me make sure that this is working. So we have P of 1963, for example. Yeah, and and then I have that's that, and then we have that's that, and then we should solve for lambda, for a and lambda. I don't know why this isn't working. Well, we can just grab the real answer. That's fine. So we have our coefficients, so we can substitute it in. So we have that a is this tiny little number here, and we have that lambda is this little number here times t. So that's our function, right? That's what we're working with. The rest are, you know, complex. Great. And now we can just plug in. So let's just double check. So P of 1963. Let's just double check that that gives us. Oh wait, no, that's not right. Oh, sorry, it's not supposed to be a 2. That should be an exponential. There we go. P of 1963 is 3.19 billion. Okay, great. And let's just double check 2023. It's 8.09 billion. Great. So now if we plug in P of 0, this is at year 0 around when Jesus, or year 1 around when Jesus lived, that would give us a population of less than 1.
so we're about down to 0 people.
Yeah, this is down to 0 people in Jesus's lifetime.
Okay.
So that means that this can't be correct.
Infant mortality rate, account for wars, account for plagues. You push that back.
Okay, so how are we accounting for those?
Well, I mean, it's really hard. You got to round it up, but the general idea is that you're coming pretty close to if you push that back. Because let's say if I were to have kids, let's say 2 people.
The point is that you
But-
cannot use a single growth rate to estimate human population.
No, the point is you can generally get it down to a reasonable number, but if you use
This is
something
not
like
a reasonable
Bill Nye's
number.
No, because you have to account for that. It would take longer. You push the years instead of doubling at 50 years, you'd have to put it to 100 years.
This is saying that even in 500 AD, you have less than 1 person.
Yeah, but you gotta
No. The point is there's no way that you can actually use a single growth rate to model human population growth. It won't work.
Yeah,
and so you're not going to be able to come up with the
actual.
So yeah, you do have to account for that. You have to account for population growth rates changing over time.
You do. It does change.
Right. And so in fact, what you can do is you can get you can model a few different periods of growth rates that are roughly the same. So you can look at from the Industrial Revolution to today, it's roughly it's a reasonable model to get a single growth rate, and then from around 5,000 or around 3,000 BC to around the Industrial Revolution, the growth rate was around it's around reasonably the same, and then before around 3,000 BC to around 12,000 BC, you get another growth rate. And then before 10,000 BC, and then before 10,000 BC, you basically get a stagnant growth rate. And what you'll find is that that's actually a pretty good model for human population.
Okay.
And that goes back hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, from what I understand about exponential growth, if you were to go back to caveman days, even like if you go down tens of thousands, it gets really big. You'd have the amount of people.
Only if you assume you have a fixed population growth rate.
Atoms.
Only if you assume that there's a fixed population growth rate. But if the population had a basically 0 growth rate between say 300,000
be
BC
zero.
and 10,000 BC, then no, you would not see a huge
But it's
population.
impossible to be zero. Nothing
Why?
in the no bacteria does that. No animals do that. It's never zero. That's just not.
Sure, it is. It's called when a population is at the carrying capacity of its environment. Look up carrying capacities. It's really well studied. Look,
Yeah,
Evan, I got to run because I'm like 10 minutes over my live stream. I have stuff to do. And I have to drop my cat off at the vet. But you should go look at the debate between James Tora and Dave Farina. It's very funny. Thank you so much for being here, Evan, though. Sorry to cut you off mid-sentence. I just do got to run. Look, so you guys should go join the Discord server and make sure to pay attention to the other things. Don't worry, the kitty cat is fine. It's just a regular annual checkup. We just got to make sure that she's okay. I will see you guys tomorrow for Ask a Physicist. Until then, make sure to go check out the YouTube channel, Dr. Blitz Debunks. It has a lot of good debate content. There will be more posted in the next few days. Probably one that will be posted tomorrow, and then one that will be posted every day ad perpetuum. So I will see you guys tomorrow for Ask a Physicist. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys whenever I catch you. Take care, everybody. Live long and prosper.